I've been putting this off for months, but every time the holidays start creeping up in the stores, or I see those stupid commercials with the perfect families around the tree, I feel it all over again, like it's sitting right there in my chest. I don't even know why I'm typing this out now, maybe because last year is finally far enough away that I can look at it without completely falling apart, or maybe because I'm tired of pretending it didn't happen when people ask why I don't have a boyfriend anymore. Whatever. I just need to get it down somewhere nobody who knows me will see it. His name was Ethan. We'd been together almost 2 years, long enough that spending Christmas with his family felt like the next natural step. He kept talking about how much his parents wanted to meet me, how his mom had this whole menu planned, prime rib and those twice-baked potatoes she only makes for special occasions. I was nervous, of course. Meeting the parents is always nerve-wracking. But I packed a couple nice sweaters and the little gift I'd gotten his mom, this scarf I spent way too much on, and we drove up a couple days before Christmas Eve. The house was exactly like he described, big colonial with white lights strung along the roofline, wreath on the door, the whole thing. His parents were warm right from the start, hugged me like I was already part of things, showed me where we'd be sleeping in the guest room with the slanted ceiling and the quilt his grandmother made. It felt good, actually, comfortable. Ethan has this best friend, Jake, that he's known forever, literally since they were in diapers, neighbors, same schools, same everything. Jake had been gone for a long time, deployed somewhere overseas, and Ethan worried about him constantly while he was away. They'd message whenever Jake had signal, and Ethan would read me parts of the conversations sometimes. Stuff about how weird it felt being home on leave before, how loud civilian life seemed after being out there. I never met Jake in person, only saw pictures, him and Ethan at graduation, at the lake one summer, Jake in his uniform before he shipped out again. He looked normal, broad shoulders, easy smile, the kind of guy you'd assume was solid. He got home right before Christmas, flew in late on Christmas Eve after we'd already had dinner, and were just sitting around the living room with eggnog and that big tree taking up half the space. The doorbell rang and Ethan practically bolted to answer it, came back with Jake trailing behind him carrying this worn green duffel. There was a lot of laughing and rough hugging, Ethan's dad shaking Jake's hand too hard, his mom tearing up a little saying how good it was to have him safe under their roof again. Jake looked exhausted, eyes a little red from travel maybe, hair shorter than in the pictures, but he smiled at everyone and dropped his bag by the stairs. When Ethan introduced us, Jake shook my hand and held it just a beat too long, looked me over in a way that made me shift my weight, but then he let go and said something generic like, "Ethan's told me a lot about you," in this low voice. I smiled back, said nice to finally meet you, all the polite stuff, and figured that was that. The evening went on pretty normal after that. We played a couple board games. Jake told a few stories about guys in his unit that had everyone laughing, though he kept it light, nothing heavy. He drank a fair amount, kept refilling his glass, but nobody seemed to think anything of it. Guy just got home from overseas. Let him unwind. Every once in a while I'd catch him looking at me across the room, not staring exactly, just longer glances than felt casual. But I told myself I was imagining it. New person in the house. He's curious. Whatever. Around midnight we all started heading to bed. Ethan's parents turning off lights downstairs, telling us not to stay up too late because Santa wouldn't come or some joke like that. Ethan and I went up to the guest room, brushed our teeth in the hall bathroom, climbed into bed with the window cracked because the house was warm from the fireplace. I remember lying there listening to him fall asleep almost right away, his breathing going deep and even, while I stared at the ceiling for a while thinking about how nice the day had been overall. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. The room was dark, just a little glow from the streetlight coming through the curtains, and at first I thought maybe I'd heard something downstairs. One of those old house creaks. Ethan was still out beside me, arm draped over my waist like always. Then I felt the mattress shift on my other side, the side toward the door, and a weight pressing down. My brain was slow, still half asleep, but I realized there was a hand sliding under the blanket, fingers brushing my hip, moving higher. I froze for a second, heart kicking hard, because it wasn't Ethan's hand. His was still heavy across me, and this one was coming from the wrong direction. I turned my head and saw Jake there, on the edge of the bed, leaning over me in the dark, his face close enough that I could smell the whiskey on him. He didn't say anything, just kept pushing his hand further, trying to get under my shirt, his other hand coming down to hold my shoulder so I couldn't roll away. Everything snapped clear all at once and I panicked, sucked in this huge breath and screamed as loud as I could. Ethan woke up swinging basically, sat up confused, and then saw Jake and just lost it. He grabbed Jake by the shirt and yanked him off the bed, started hitting him, hard punches that sounded sick in the quiet house. I scrambled back against the headboard, pulling the blanket up, shaking so bad I couldn't even get words out. The light flipped on and Ethan's parents were in the doorway, his mom in her robe asking what on earth was happening, his dad yelling at them to stop. Ethan was breathing heavy, holding Jake down on the floor, blood on Jake's lip already, and he looked up and said Jake had been on top of me, trying to… He couldn't even finish the sentence, just repeated it. He was trying to touch her, Dad. He was in here trying to force himself on her. Jake didn't fight back much after the first few hits, just lay there breathing hard and muttering stuff like, "I thought she wanted it," and "You don't understand." Ethan's dad pulled Ethan off him, told Jake to get up and get his things and get out of the house right then. His mom was crying, asking me if I was okay, but I couldn't answer, just sat there hugging my knees feeling like I was going to throw up. Jake grabbed his bag from downstairs and left without saying much else, door slamming behind him. Ethan sat on the bed with me after his parents went back to their room, kept apologizing like it was somehow his fault, holding me while I shook, but I couldn't really feel his arms. Everything felt far away. Morning came way too fast. I barely slept, kept hearing noises outside, expecting the door to open again. Ethan's parents made breakfast like nothing had happened, pancakes and bacon, trying to act normal, asking if we wanted coffee. Jake showed up around 9, pounding on the front door until Ethan's dad opened it. He looked rough, eyes bloodshot, still in the same clothes, and he had this black pistol in his hand that he was waving around yelling that Ethan had ruined everything, that I was supposed to be with him, that he'd waited long enough. Ethan pushed me into the living room and told me to stay down, his dad trying to talk Jake calm, hands up saying, "Put the gun away, son. We can figure this out." Jake kept screaming about how Ethan didn't deserve me, how he'd always been second, how deployment had shown him what really mattered. I called 911 from my phone behind the couch, whispering the address, hearing the operator tell me to stay on the line. It felt like forever, but probably wasn't more than 10 minutes before cops pulled up, sirens off, got him to drop the gun and cuffed him right there on the porch. The rest of the day was statements and questions, officers in the kitchen drinking coffee Ethan's mom kept pouring, me wrapped in a blanket on the couch repeating the same things over and over. Jake got taken away, charged with assault and whatever they call showing up with a gun like that. Ethan's parents kept saying how sorry they were, how Jake had always had problems, anger stuff when he was younger, how the army was supposed to help straighten him out, but maybe coming home was too much all at once. They talked about PTSD, about how he'd been different in messages lately, quieter. Ethan just sat there looking hollow, saying he couldn't believe his best friend would do something like that. By afternoon, everyone was begging me not to press charges. Not outright at first, more like hints, his mom saying Jake had been through hell over there, that jail would destroy whatever chance he had left, that he and Ethan had been like brothers their whole lives. Ethan's dad mentioning the family had known Jake's parents forever, how losing him like this would break them. Even Ethan, after a while, asked if maybe we could just let the gun thing go through and drop the rest, said Jake needed help more than punishment. I sat there listening to all of it feeling numb, like I wasn't even in my own body anymore, and eventually I said, "Okay, fine, whatever." I wouldn't push it further. They all looked so relieved, hugging each other, talking about getting Jake into some program when he got out. I left that night, packed my bag while they were downstairs cleaning up the Christmas mess that never got opened, told Ethan I needed to go home to my own family. He tried to talk me into staying one more day, kept saying we could still salvage something, but I couldn't look at him without seeing Jake's face in the dark, without hearing all of them choose Jake's future over what he'd done to me. I drove the 3 hours back alone, got to my parents' house after midnight, told them I'd just missed home and wanted to wake up there Christmas morning. They bought it, or pretended to. I broke up with Ethan a week later. He kept texting, calling, saying he understood why I was upset but that Jake was gone now, locked up for the gun charges at least, getting help. I didn't answer after a while, blocked the number eventually. Haven't spoken to any of them since. I spent last Christmas with my parents and my sister, just us, no big production, and it was quiet, but it was mine. This year I'm doing the same. No boyfriend, no invitations to anyone else's family, just staying home where nobody asks me to forgive someone who tried to take something I didn't offer. Sometimes I still wake up feeling that hand on me, the weight on the mattress. I don't know if that goes away. I just know I won't ever put myself in a house full of people who think loyalty means looking the other way. I still don't know the whole story, and at this point I'm not sure I ever will. It's been long enough now that the holidays roll around again, and I just feel this knot in my stomach every time I see snow in the forecast, or those lights going up on houses. People keep saying time heals things, but it doesn't really. Not when there's this big hole where the truth is supposed to be. My family doesn't talk about it anymore, not to me anyway, and whenever I bring it up they change the subject or get quiet in that way that tells you to drop it. I guess that's why I'm writing it down here, because somebody might as well have a record of what happened, even if it's just the parts I know. I was home for Christmas that year, flew in a few days early because work was slow, and Mom kept saying how nice it would be to have everyone under one roof again. I live a couple states away now, have my own apartment in a city where nobody knows my history, a job in IT that pays the bills and keeps me at a desk most days, but I still try to make it back for the holidays when I can. The house hadn't changed much since I left for college. Same faded blue siding, same crooked mailbox Dad never got around to fixing, same creaky stairs inside that announce every step, same plastic tree we've dragged out of the attic every December since I was a kid, because Mom refuses to get a real one that drops needles everywhere. That year we'd put it up the weekend I arrived, strung the old lights that flicker sometimes if you don't arrange them just right, hung the ornaments we've accumulated over decades, the mismatched ones from school projects and vacations, and the fancy glass ones Mom buys on sale after the season. The routine felt comforting, familiar, the kind of thing that makes you think nothing bad can touch you as long as you stick to it. Christmas Eve started normal enough. My sister Amy came over with her husband Mark and their 2 kids, Emma, who's 7 now, and little Tyler, who was barely walking steady back then. They brought cookies Amy had baked, the cutout kind with too much icing that the kids helped decorate, and we ate way too many while we wrapped the last presents. Dinner was early because the kids get cranky if it's late. Mom's lasagna, the one with the ricotta layer she only makes for holidays, garlic bread, salad that mostly got ignored. Dad carved the extra ham we'd cooked even though it wasn't technically Christmas yet, telling the same stories he always tells about how he proposed to Mom in a snowstorm, just like the one coming in. It started snowing around dusk. Nothing serious at first, just light flurries drifting past the windows while we ate, but the weather app on my phone kept pushing alerts about a bigger storm moving through overnight. Dad checked the radar on his tablet, said it looked like we'd get a few inches, maybe more, but nothing we hadn't seen before. After dinner we cleared the table. Amy and Mark got the kids in pajamas, and we did the tradition where the little ones get to open one present early, always new pajamas or a book or something small. Emma tore into hers with that wild excitement kids have. Tyler mostly chewed on the wrapping paper while we laughed and took pictures. The adults settled in the living room with hot chocolate. Mom spikes hers with a little peppermint schnapps. Dad sticks to coffee unless it's later, and we put on one of those old Christmas movies, the black and white one with the angel getting his wings. The kids fell asleep halfway through, sprawled on the couch under blankets, and Amy carried them upstairs to the guest room one at a time. Dad ran out of beer sometime after 9. He kept a 12-pack in the fridge door, some cheap lager he'd bought in bulk, nothing fancy, just what he liked with his evening TV. He opened the fridge, stared for a second, then grumbled loud enough for everyone to hear that he was out and the game was still on or something. Mom told him to forget it, that the roads were starting to get slick and he could wait until morning. But Dad waved her off like he always did, saying the corner store on Maple was open until midnight on holidays, and it was only a 10-minute drive even in snow. He pulled on his old Carhartt coat, the one with the frayed cuffs, stuffed his feet into boots without lacing them all the way, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. He kissed Mom on the cheek, told her not to wait up if he took longer because he might stop and fill the tank too, then ruffled my hair like I was still 12 even though I'm pushing 30 and have a receding hairline he teases me about. "Be right back," he said, and the door shut behind him with that familiar thud. We heard the sedan start up outside, the engine turning over a couple times because it was cold, then tires crunching slow on the fresh snow as he backed out of the driveway and headed down the street. At first, nobody thought much about it when he didn't come right back. The snow was picking up, coming down harder in big flakes that stuck to the windows, and Mom kept glancing out through the curtains, saying he was probably driving careful, taking his time like he should. Amy and Mark cleaned up the wrapping paper mess, folding it into trash bags, and I helped Mom load the dishwasher, talking about nothing important, work, the kids, how Emma was doing in school. 10 o'clock came and went, then 10:30, and I remember noticing how quiet it was outside except for the wind picking up, rattling the gutters a little. Mom started checking her phone more often, refreshing the weather app, saying maybe he'd stop to help somebody stuck on the side of the road because that's exactly the kind of thing Dad would do, pull over with his jumper cables or shovel without thinking twice. By 11, she was pacing between the kitchen and living room, phone in hand, and she called his cell once, left a voicemail in that calm voice she uses when she's trying not to worry, asking where he was and to call when he got the message. Then she sent a couple texts. Simple stuff like, "Everything okay?" and "Kids are asleep, drive safe." No answer, no little read receipt even. The house felt smaller as the minutes dragged, like the walls were closing in while we waited for headlights to sweep across the ceiling. Amy kept saying he was fine, probably chatting with the cashier or something, but her voice got tighter each time. Around 11:30, Mom looked at me across the room, her face pale under the tree lights that were still twinkling like nothing was wrong, and said maybe I should go check the route, that the store wasn't far, and 2 sets of eyes looking were better than none. I didn't argue, just pulled on my coat and boots, grabbed my keys, kissed Mom on the forehead when she hugged me too hard at the door. "Call if you see him first," she said, and I nodded, stepped out into the cold. The storm had gotten bad fast, worse than the app made it sound. Wind whipping snow sideways so thick the streetlights were just blurry halos, the road already covered in a couple inches that hadn't been plowed yet. I let the car warm up for a minute, scraped the windshield quick with the sleeve of my coat because I couldn't find the brush, then pulled out slow. Visibility was crap, maybe 20 feet at best even with high beams, and the wipers couldn't keep up entirely. I took the same route Dad would have, past the high school, down the hill toward Maple, gripping the wheel tight because the tires slid on every turn. I kept thinking about him out there somewhere, maybe off in a ditch with the sedan nose first in snow, phone dead or no signal, waiting for help. Or worse, but I pushed that down. I drove faster than I should have, probably 40 on roads that needed 20, and almost lost it once coming down that steep part near the bridge, the back end fishtailing until I eased off the gas and straightened out. My heart was pounding the whole way, hands sweaty inside gloves. By the time I turned into the parking lot of the store, my stomach was in knots. The lot was lit up harsh with those sodium lights, but cutting through the snow were flashing red and blue, strobing off the white everywhere. There were 2 ambulances parked crooked near the entrance, doors open, 3 police cruisers with lights spinning, yellow tape already stretched across the front doors and around part of the lot. A couple officers stood outside smoking or talking into radios, flashlights cutting beams through the falling snow. I parked as close as I could without crossing the tape, left the engine running, and got out, legs shaky from the drive and the adrenaline dumping all at once. The cold hit hard, wind driving snow into my face as I walked toward the nearest cop, this younger guy in a heavy jacket who held up a hand to stop me. I told him my dad had come here for beer, that he'd left home a couple hours ago and hadn't come back, gave Dad's name and what he looked like and that he was driving the old gray sedan. The cop's face changed, got that careful blank look they train for, and he radioed someone inside the store, asked me to wait right there. Snow kept piling on my shoulders, melting cold down my neck while I stood shifting from foot to foot. Another officer came out a minute later, older guy with a mustache full of flakes, deep lines around his eyes from squinting into the weather. He asked a few more questions, wanted the car's color and make, and then he nodded slow and said there'd been an incident in the parking lot, that I should probably sit in my car while they sorted things out. But I could see past him, through the flapping tape, the paramedics moving around one of the ambulances, a stretcher being wheeled out from near a familiar shape under the lights. Dad's sedan. I knew the bumper sticker on the back even from here, and a white sheet pulled up over something on it that was too still. They told me pieces later, from what the witnesses inside the store saw through the windows and the partial security footage that caught the edge of it. Dad had gone in, bought his 12-pack like he planned, maybe chatted with the cashier about the storm, then walked back out toward the sedan carrying the case under one arm. This guy came up to him from the shadows between the parked cars, started talking low like they knew each other. People inside heard raised voices, Dad backing up a step saying something they couldn't make out clear, the other man calling him by name, getting in his space. Then it happened fast. The guy pulled a handgun from his coat pocket, shot Dad 3 times before Dad could even drop the beer. The case hit the ground and busted, cans rolling out into the snow. Dad went down hard, and the shooter stood there for a second like he was saying something else, then turned and ran to an old Ford pickup parked farther out in the lot, jumped in and sped off, tires spinning snow behind him as he peeled out onto Maple without lights on at first. People inside called 911 right away. A couple customers ran out to try pressure on the wounds or CPR, but it was too late by then, blood spreading dark under Dad in the white. Paramedics worked on him anyway, loaded him up and rushed to the hospital with lights and sirens cutting through the storm. I followed the ambulance there. Barely remember the drive except white-knuckling the wheel again, sliding through a couple stop signs because nothing was plowed. At the hospital, they put me in one of those family rooms with stiff chairs and bad coffee from a machine, told me to wait while they stabilized him. A doctor came in eventually, still in scrubs, face tired, and said they'd done everything but the wounds were too severe, that he hadn't made it. I sat there staring at the wall for I don't know how long, then had to call Mom. I dialed with fingers that wouldn't stop shaking, told her over the phone that Dad was gone, that someone had shot him in the parking lot. She made this sound like something ripping, this high broken noise. Then the phone dropped, or she did, and I heard Amy in the background screaming what happened, Mark trying to calm everyone. I drove home after the chaplain talked to me about arrangements and paperwork. Roads finally plowed a little, so it wasn't as bad, but everything felt unreal, like the world had tilted and I was just along for it. When I walked in the front door, everyone was in the living room waiting under those stupid twinkling lights, faces pale and eyes red. Mom grabbed me at the door and held on so hard I could feel her whole body shaking, sobs coming in waves she couldn't control. Amy just sat on the couch rocking a little, Mark beside her with his arm around her shoulders, both of them looking like they'd aged 10 years. The kids were still upstairs asleep somehow, thank God. We stayed up most of the night like that, clustered together, police coming by later in uniforms dusted with snow to ask questions, take statements, tell us what little they had. The description of the shooter, that it was an older Ford pickup he drove off in, dark color maybe, no clear plate because of the angle in the snow, but witnesses heard the man call Dad an old friend before shooting. They said they'd canvass and follow leads, but the storm was slowing everything. Christmas morning came gray and heavy, snow still falling thick enough to cover any tracks left in the lot, like the world was trying to erase it. Nobody touched the presents stacked under the tree. Nobody pretended to be cheerful or made breakfast beyond coffee that sat cold in mugs. The kids came down eventually, confused why nobody was excited, and Amy took them back upstairs with some excuse about waiting for later. That's when I started noticing how strange everyone acted when the subject came up. Mom kept exchanging looks with Aunt Linda, Dad's sister who'd shown up sometime in the night, with these tiny head shakes, like warnings to keep quiet. Uncle Ray, Dad's brother, avoided eye contact when I asked if Dad had mentioned any trouble at work or with anyone lately. Muttered something about no, nothing he knew. But the way conversations cut off when I walked into the kitchen, the way Mom's voice tightened whenever the detective's name was mentioned, it all felt wrong. Later Christmas Day, the lead detective called my cell, said they'd located the shooter a few hours south, holed up in a cheap motel off the interstate. He'd surrendered without a fight, confessed almost immediately, said Dad had betrayed him years ago, that they'd been involved in something back in the day, maybe a deal gone bad or money owed, something that sent this guy away for a stretch and left him blaming Dad ever since. He'd been looking for Dad for months apparently, found out where we lived somehow, waited for a chance. The detective was vague on details, said it was still active and some records were sealed, but I heard enough to know it wasn't random, that this old friend had history with Dad nobody ever mentioned to me. When I told Mom and the others what the cop said, Mom just nodded slow, eyes fixed on her coffee, and said, yeah, maybe something like that from before I was born, but she didn't elaborate, wouldn't meet my eyes. Aunt Linda changed the subject to funeral arrangements quick, and nobody circled back. I asked outright, did you know this guy? Did Dad have enemies he never told me about? And everyone swore they were as shocked as I was, that Dad kept his past private, that whatever happened was ancient history not worth digging up now that he was gone. I couldn't stay after that. The house felt poisoned with all the half-truths, the air thick with things nobody would say. I packed my bag the day after Christmas, told Mom I had to get back for work even though I didn't, hugged everyone goodbye while they begged me to stay longer. The funeral was a week later, small service at the same church Dad went to sporadically, cemetery plot next to grandparents under fresh snow. Lot of old neighbors showed up, co-workers, people from his bowling league, all saying how good a guy he was, how senseless it all seemed. Mom held my arm the whole time, face blank like she was somewhere else. And after the cemetery reception at the house, she hugged me hard at the door, told me to drive safe and call when I got home, but still no answers, no explanation about whatever betrayal sent that man hunting Dad down on Christmas Eve. I've asked since, a few times over phone calls that get awkward fast, then emails nobody responds to, then outright demanding in a voicemail I regret now. Always the same, silence, or let your father rest in peace, or it doesn't change anything. Maybe they think they're protecting his memory, or me, or themselves. Maybe they're right and whatever he did back then doesn't matter anymore. But it does to me. I still see him walking out that door with his coat half-zipped, hear the sedan pulling away. Think about how 10 minutes for beer turned into the last time any of us saw him alive. I don't go back as much now. Holidays are quiet, just me in my apartment with takeout and whatever movie doesn't have snow in it. Sometimes I drive past corner stores late at night and feel my chest tighten, and I think about my own family, the people who raised me, sitting around that tree keeping secrets even after what it cost us all. It doesn't feel like protection anymore. It feels like being left alone in the storm, wondering if the man I called Dad was someone I never really knew at all. I don't even like thinking about this anymore, but every time the holiday decorations start going up in the stores, or I see those big Santa photo setups in ads on my phone, it all sits there heavy in my chest like something lodged that won't move. I avoid that mall entirely now, won't even drive past it if I can help it, because even the exit sign on the highway makes my hands tighten on the wheel. If we need anything in December, groceries, gifts, whatever, I order online or go to the little strip mall across town where there's no big display, no lines of kids waiting for pictures. People say I'm being dramatic, that one bad experience shouldn't ruin the whole place, that kids forget things like this, but they weren't standing there watching it happen. They didn't have to pull their daughter away and feel her little body go stiff with confusion while everything around you keeps playing that same looping Christmas music like nothing's wrong. She was only 6 then, 6 and so excited about everything, and I let her climb onto his lap because I thought it was safe. It was one of those rushed afternoons a few days before Christmas, the kind where you realize you've waited too long on half your list and the weather's turning cold enough that you don't want to be out after dark. I'd picked her up from school early because her class had a half day for some holiday party, and she came out with paint on her fingers from whatever craft they'd done, talking non-stop about how they'd made paper reindeer. I told her on the drive over that we'd do some quick shopping at the mall, pick up the last few gifts, and maybe some extra ornaments because our tree looked sparse that year. The lights were fine, but half the baubles were old and chipped from being packed away wrong the January before. She was happy about the plan, kicking her legs in the booster seat, asking if we could look for those glitter gel pens she'd seen in a commercial, and maybe get a pretzel afterward if she was good. I remember circling the parking lot twice before finding a spot near the back, the asphalt already dotted with slush from earlier flurries, grabbing the foldable bags from the trunk while she hopped out and waited, mittens too big on her hands because they were last year's. The mall was packed when we walked in through the main doors, that blast of warm air carrying the usual mix of scents: cinnamon from the pretzel stand, coffee from the kiosk, fake pine from whatever diffuser they used to make it feel festive. Holiday music was playing over the speakers, some upbeat version of Jingle Bells that looped every hour or so, and people were everywhere, arms full of bags, kids running ahead of parents, strollers blocking half the walkway. We started in the big department store at one end, the one with the escalators right inside the entrance. She held onto the little basket while I wandered the aisles looking for something for my sister, a scarf maybe, or one of those sets with lotion and body wash that always go on sale this time of year. We ended up with a soft gray sweater instead, and then some art supplies for her cousin because she insisted he'd like the markers better than another toy. She kept picking things up, asking if we could get this or that for ourselves, and I had to keep steering her back, saying no, today's for other people. But maybe Santa will remember the gel pens. After that, we hit one of the temporary kiosks in the wide part of the corridor, the kind that pops up only for the season selling nothing but decorations, boxes of ornaments stacked high, rolls of ribbon, those little lighted houses that people collect. She took forever deciding, holding up different ones to see how they caught the light, asking my opinion on every color. We settled on a pack of silver and blue balls, some icicle strands, and a new star for the top because the old angel had lost a wing sometime during storage and looked lopsided when we tried to perch it up. My arms were getting heavy from carrying everything, the bags cutting into my fingers even through the handles, and I kept glancing at the time on my phone, calculating how long the drive home would take and what I could throw together for dinner that wouldn't require another stop. We were heading toward the exit closest to our car, cutting through the center court where they always put the big displays, when she spotted it. The Santa setup was impossible to miss. Raised platform with a red velvet throne, fake snow scattered thick on the floor around it, plastic reindeer posed on either side, a painted backdrop of a sleigh and snowy hills. There were twinkling lights strung everywhere, and a velvet rope maze guiding the line back and forth. The line itself was long, wrapping past the fountain and almost to the jewelry store kiosk, parents standing tired with kids in their arms, or older ones fidgeting and complaining about waiting. She stopped walking so suddenly I had to sidestep to avoid stepping on her heel. "Mommy, Santa's right there. Can I go see him? Please. I didn't tell him my list yet." I looked at the line, counted at least 25 or 30 groups, maybe more, and then at the clock on the wall, already pushing late afternoon, sun probably setting outside. I told her, "No, sweetie, it's too long. We have to get home and start dinner. Maybe we'll come back another weekend when it's not so busy." But she wouldn't let it go. Started with the pleading voice, then the whine that gets louder if you ignore it, saying she had to tell him in person or he might bring the wrong doll, that all her friends at school had already gone and gotten pictures. People around us were glancing over, some smiling like it was cute, others looking sympathetic because they'd clearly been through the same thing. I tried distracting her, said we could write a letter tonight and mail it, or burn it in the fireplace like some families do, but she kept pulling on my coat, eyes starting to fill up. I felt that exhaustion settle in, the kind where you've been on your feet too long and still have wrapping to do later, but you also don't want to be the mom who says no to Santa. So I caved, said fine, we'll wait, but we're leaving right after your turn, no extra pictures or anything. She lit up immediately, grabbed my hand and dragged me to the end of the line, standing on tiptoes to try to see how many people were ahead. The wait dragged on forever. We shuffled forward every few minutes, me shifting the bags from one arm to the other, trying to find a spot to set them down when we stopped moving. She kept asking how many more, counting the kids ahead of us out loud, getting excited every time the line moved. Parents around us made small talk, complaining about crowds, talking about school break starting soon, one dad joking about how Santa better bring him a winning lottery ticket this year. There was a baby a few spots up crying off and on, and the mom kept bouncing him, apologizing to everyone. I checked my phone a few times, answered a text from work, scrolled through a couple emails to pass the time. The music kept playing, the same songs repeating, and the air felt stuffy with all the bodies and the heat cranked up inside. I noticed him a couple times while we waited, the Santa up on the platform. He was doing the whole routine, deep ho-ho-ho laugh, waving at kids in line, posing for the official photographer the mall hires. He had the full costume, red suit with white trim, big black belt, beard that looked real enough from a distance, hat perched just right. Every time a kid climbed up, he'd settle them on his knee, lean in like he was listening close, nod along while they talked. It all looked normal from far away, the kind of thing you see every year and don't think twice about. One little girl ahead of us spent forever on his lap, showing him a drawing she'd brought, and he patted her back while she talked. Another boy, maybe 4, got scared halfway through and started crying, and Santa handed him back quick to his dad without making a fuss. Nothing stood out as off, not from the back of the line anyway. Just another tired guy in a suit doing the holiday shift. It must have been close to 45 minutes before the elf helper in the striped tights and pointed shoes waved us forward. She ran up the little carpeted steps, climbed onto his lap without any shyness, settling in like she belonged there. I stepped closer to the railing, pulled out my phone to take photos and video because that's what you're supposed to do, wanting to capture her face lit up under all those twinkling lights. She started right away, leaning in close to his ear, rattling off her list in that serious voice kids use when they're making sure you get every detail. The baby doll with the pink dress that cries real tears, the set of unicorn chapter books her friend has, new glitter markers because half of hers were dried out, maybe a big girl bike with streamers if she'd been good enough all year. Santa nodded along, asking questions in that deep voice. Had she been helping Mommy around the house? Was she nice to her friends at school? What about eating vegetables? She answered everything, swinging her legs a little, completely caught up in the moment. I was focused on the screen, zooming in to get her expression, adjusting the angle to avoid the glare from the overhead lights, thinking about how cute the pictures would turn out for the family chat later. Then I noticed it the first time. His hand, the one that had started around her shoulder or back to hold her steady, shifting lower. Slow. Down past her waist, settling across her lap like he was adjusting her position, fingers spreading wider than they needed to. I thought maybe it was nothing at first. Maybe she'd slid and he was keeping her from falling off. But then it stayed there, pressing a little, thumb moving in a small circle. She kept talking, didn't seem to notice, too busy explaining why she needed the doll specifically. I lowered the phone for a second, watched without the screen in the way, and saw it again. His other hand coming up to rest on her knee, then sliding inward along her thigh under the edge of her coat, slow enough that from far away it might look like normal movement. My stomach turned cold. Everything else, the music, the chatter from the line, the flash from the mall photographer, faded out. I started recording again out of reflex, zooming in tighter, catching the way his fingers pressed, trying to work further between her legs while she sat there oblivious, still listing off art supplies. He was smiling for the official camera, head tilted toward her like he was listening, but his hands were doing something else entirely. I felt it hit me all at once, this wave of nausea and rage, and I stopped recording, shoved the phone in my pocket, and moved fast. Lunged forward and grabbed her under the arms, pulling her off his lap so suddenly she made a confused noise, legs kicking in the air. Held her tight against me while she asked what was wrong, why we weren't finishing, if she'd said something bad. Santa looked up, face redder now under the makeup, beard a little askew, saying in that same deep voice, "Is there a problem, ma'am? She was doing just fine." I told him there absolutely was a problem, that I saw exactly where his hands were, and to never touch my daughter again. My voice came out louder than I expected, shaking hard. People in line went quiet, heads turning. I waved over the nearest elf, the teenager who'd been helping kids up the steps, told her to get security or the manager right now, that this man had been touching my child inappropriately and I wasn't letting it slide. He started denying it immediately, saying she'd been squirming and he was only keeping her balanced, that I'd misunderstood, that kids move around a lot. But his voice cracked a little, and he wouldn't look directly at me. Parents behind us started murmuring, pulling their own kids closer, asking what happened. Security showed up within minutes, 2 big guys in mall uniforms who clearly knew how to handle crowds. And I repeated everything, pointed at him still sitting there, said, "Check the video I took, check whatever cameras they had overhead." He stood up then, saying he felt unwell suddenly, that he needed to step backstage for a minute, started edging toward the curtain behind the throne. One guard blocked him, told him firmly to sit back down until police arrived. The manager came rushing over soon after, blazer and name tag, face pale, apologizing nonstop and asking if we wanted to move to an office to talk privately. By then, he was sweating visibly, beard slipping further, still insisting it was an accident, that he'd never do anything like that. When someone mentioned calling the police again, he made a real move. Tried to push past the guards toward the employee hallway behind the display. They took him down fast, one grabbing his arm, the other sweeping his legs, got him face down on the fake snow while he grunted and struggled, red suit bunching up. They used zip ties on his wrists, hauled him up, and marched him away through a side door while parents watched, some shielding their kids' eyes, others demanding answers about how he got hired in the first place. The rest of the day blurred into statements and waiting. We sat in a small back office near security, me holding her on my lap while she cried quietly because everything felt loud and scary, an officer taking notes while another asked gentle questions through me. They reviewed the video on my phone, the mall's overhead footage, ran his ID. He'd been hired only a week or two earlier through some temp agency. Background check came back clean under the name he was using, but fingerprints matched a registered offender from years back in another state. Changed his name legally, moved around enough to stay off most radars. No one had dug deeper until that afternoon. Other families wanted explanations, how thorough the checks were if their own kids had been alone with him. The mall shut the entire Santa display down for the rest of the season. Police took him out in real cuffs later. I followed through on every charge, went to every meeting, made sure nothing got dropped. He took a plea eventually, went away for a few years. We drove home in the dark, bags still in the trunk, her asleep in the back with dried tears on her face. I carried her inside, tucked her into bed without changing her, then sat up most of the night checking locks, staring out windows, replaying every second in my head. I've never set foot in that mall again during the holidays. We shop earlier now, or online, or at places where I know every face involved. Some things you can't unsee, and some places just stay ruined no matter how many new decorations they put up the next year. I still can't look at any Santa decoration without feeling my stomach knot up. Even the normal ones in stores or on people's lawns, the cheerful kind with rosy cheeks and a sack of toys. It's been years now, long enough that the holidays come around again, and I just keep the curtains closed on the side of the house that faces the street because seeing those jolly red figures makes me remember how one of them stood in our living room with a knife, dripping something dark and thick onto the carpet while we all tried to pretend it wasn't happening right in front of us. My wife thinks I should talk to someone about it, says I get too quiet every December, that I flinch when certain songs come on the radio. But talking doesn't fix the fact that I know what I saw, what we all went through that week, what we had to do to make it stop. I bought the thing as a joke, that's the worst part, the part that keeps me up sometimes staring at the ceiling. A stupid, ironic gift because my brother-in-law collects creepy stuff, and I thought it would get a laugh out of everyone around the tree. It started with one of those online auctions, the kind where people dump estate lots or attic finds that nobody wants anymore. Weird antiques mixed in with old tools and chipped dishes. I was scrolling late one night after work, feet up on the coffee table, a couple beers in, looking for something cheap and odd for Dave because he's always posting pictures on his socials of his shelves full of clown figurines and those old rubber horror movie masks and taxidermy gone wrong. The listing popped up buried in a page of Christmas stuff. Vintage Santa Claus statue, hand-carved wood, about 2 feet tall, described as holding a ceremonial knife instead of a sack of toys. The photos were grainy, taken with a flash that washed everything out, but you could see the detail even through the bad quality. Red paint chipped and flaking in places showing raw wood underneath. White beard matted and yellowed like it had been stored in a damp basement. Eyes painted solid black with tiny red dots for pupils that seemed to follow the camera, and this long curved blade in its right hand that looked stained dark along the edge. The seller called it folk art, possibly Eastern European, unique holiday piece with dark whimsical charm. Starting bid was $10, no watchers, nobody else touching it, so on a whim I threw in 20 and closed the laptop, forgot about it until the confirmation email came a day later saying I'd won. Shipping was fast. Box showed up a week before Christmas wrapped in brown paper and way too much tape, smelling faintly of mildew even through the cardboard. I didn't open it right away, just shook it once to make sure nothing rattled loose, stuck it under the tree with the other presents piling up. Tag saying, "To Dave, "Love your favorite brother-in-law," in my chicken scratch handwriting because I knew he'd think it was hilarious in that dark, twisted way he likes. Maybe said it next to his Chucky doll or whatever new thing he'd picked up. We were hosting that year, me and Lisa in the house we'd bought 5 years earlier, mortgage still feeling new, our 2 kids who were teenagers then and full of eye rolls, my sister Jen and Dave driving in from the city, my parents coming up from downstate with their old SUV packed full of cookies and that artificial tree they insist on bringing even though we have one. The house was full by the 23rd, usual chaos of grocery runs and last-minute wrapping and arguing over which streaming service had the better Christmas movies. Christmas Eve, we did the big dinner like always, prime rib because Lisa insists on doing it right with the horseradish sauce and Yorkshire puddings. Too much red wine flowing, the kids sneaking some when they thought we weren't looking. Everyone was in pajamas by 8, sprawled around the living room with the fire going and the tree lights blinking slow. We did the tradition of opening one gift early, mostly new socks or books or something small. Dave's turn came last, and he tore into the paper like a kid, pulled out the statue, held it up over his head, turning it slow so everyone could see. At first, he laughed exactly like I pictured. Deep belly laugh, did a creepy ho-ho-ho voice, said it was perfect for his collection, that the knife was chef's kiss levels of disturbed. We all chuckled, even my mom who usually hates that stuff, because it was obviously just a weird old carving. He posed it on the mantel next to the stockings for pictures, knife pointing out like it was conducting the room. Nobody thought much about the stains on the blade. We figured it was old paint or varnish gone dark over decades, maybe some artist's attempt at shadow. That night everyone crashed early, full bellies and tired from travel and wine. I remember waking up around 3 needing water, throat dry from the fireplace heat, padding downstairs in socks trying not to creak the steps. The living room was dark except for the tree lights still on their timer, multicolored glow flickering across the wrapping paper mess and the half-eaten cookies on the plate for Santa that the kids still pretended to believe in for tradition. The statue was still on the mantel where Dave left it, but I swear its head was turned a little more toward the stairs than before, like it had shifted to watch whoever came down. I stood there a second, rubbing my eyes, told myself it was the angle or the shadows, or maybe someone bumped it, putting more logs on earlier. Got my water from the kitchen, drank it slow, listening to the house settle. Went back to bed without turning on any lights. Didn't think about it again until morning. Christmas Day started normal enough. Kids up at dawn ripping open presents, paper flying everywhere, coffee brewing strong because we all needed it. Cinnamon rolls Lisa made from scratch going in the oven, filling the house with that smell. Dave came down last carrying the statue like it was his new baby, saying he wanted to find the perfect spot for it before they headed home. Set it right on the coffee table while we ate breakfast around the island. That's when my daughter Ellie noticed the knife looked wet, like something fresh had dripped down the blade onto the wood grain, leaving dark streaks. She pointed it out, and we laughed it off at first, probably condensation from the humidity or sap from the tree dripping over, whatever. But by afternoon, when we were all slumped on the couch watching some football game my dad insisted on, my son Max yelled from the kitchen that the statue was on the counter now, standing right next to the big knife block like it belonged there. Nobody admitted moving it. Dave said maybe he did in his sleep or something and forgot, but his face looked off, like he wasn't entirely sure, and Jen gave him that look she does when she thinks he's hiding something. Things got weird faster than I want to admit. We'd turn our backs for a minute, to grab another drink or answer the door for neighbors dropping off fudge, and it would be somewhere else entirely. On the stairs halfway up like it was heading to the bedrooms. In the hallway outside the kids' rooms. Once on the front porch in the snow like it had walked out to look at the lights across the street. Always holding that knife steady, always facing toward whoever was closest in the house, head tilted just enough that you noticed. My mom kept saying it was giving her the creeps, asked Dave politely to put it away in his suitcase, but he kept brushing it off, saying it was just a carving, wood and paint, nothing to worry about on Christmas. That night, after everyone finally went to bed, we heard thumping downstairs, slow and heavy like deliberate footsteps across the hardwood. I went down first with my phone flashlight, Lisa right behind me whispering to be careful. Found the statue at the bottom of the stairs, knife stuck deep into the banister post, wood splintered around the blade like it had been driven in hard. I pulled it out with both hands, wrapped it in an old towel, carried it to the garage and stuck it in a cardboard box on the workbench under some tools. Told everyone in the morning it was gone for good. Let's just forget the dumb thing and enjoy the rest of the holiday. Next morning, it was back on the mantel exactly where it started, knife clean, but the banister still gouged deep with splinters sticking out. Lisa started crying then, quiet the way she does when she's really scared and trying not to show the kids, said we needed to get rid of it for real this time, that something was wrong with it. Dave tried smashing it first in the driveway, grabbed the sledgehammer from the garage, swung hard enough to dent concrete, but the wood wouldn't crack, blade didn't chip, just rang like metal on metal with sparks flying. My dad suggested burning it like you do with anything cursed in old stories. We built a big fire in the pit out back, stacked logs high with kindling and lighter fluid, waited till it was roaring hot, tossed the thing in wrapped in newspaper. Flames went right around it, paint blistered and bubbled, beard singed off in patches. But after an hour when we raked it out with tongs, it was cool to the touch, not even blackened, eyes still staring like nothing happened. My son Max grabbed my rifle from the gun safe then, said maybe bullets would do something since nothing else worked. We set it on an old stump out back past the shed, everyone standing way behind, and he put 3 rounds center mass from 50 yards. Holes appeared clean through the chest, wood chips flying, then closed slow right in front of us, like the grain was knitting itself back together, smooth as new. We were all freaking out by then, voices getting loud in the garage arguing about what to do next. Lisa wanted to call a priest or someone who knew about this kind of thing. Dave kept repeating it was impossible, and maybe we were all seeing things from stress. My parents just sat in their car like they were ready to drive home early. The kids stayed close to us, pale and quiet for once. We decided to bury it deep, dug a hole way out in the back field under fresh snow, maybe 5 or 6 feet down into half-frozen dirt. Took hours with pickaxes and shovels because the ground was hard, hands blistered even through thick gloves, backs aching by the time we were done. Wrapped it first in chains from the garage and an old tarp, dropped it in, covered it careful, packed snow on top smooth so no one would notice. Came inside exhausted and cold, drank hot chocolate like we'd accomplished something, told ourselves that was finally it, no way it could get out of that. It could. That night the smoke alarms went off around 2 a.m., shrill and overlapping till my ears rang. Whole downstairs filled with thick haze, kitchen on fire, curtains blazing up the wall, something poured across the tile floor burning hot and blue and fast. We got everyone out in seconds, kids screaming half asleep, my dad coughing hard from the smoke, all of us standing barefoot in snow watching flames lick up the siding while I called 911 and waited forever for trucks on icy roads. That's when I saw it clear through the big picture window. Red shape moving inside the living room, statue standing tall, holding the red gas can we keep in the garage for the mower, pouring the last of it onto the Christmas tree and the couch cushions. Knife in the other hand glinting under the firelight, head tilted like it was listening to us outside and yelling at it through the glass. We were losing everything, house filling with black smoke, heat cracking windows, when Ellie started singing. Just quiet at first, voice shaking, jingle bells, off-key and desperate like when she was little. Then Max joined in louder, switching to Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer because it was the first thing that came to mind. Lisa caught on quick, started belting Frosty the Snowman with tears running down her face. My parents added their voices, Dave too. All of us standing in a ragged half-circle facing the burning house singing every annoying carol we could think of. Grandma got run over by a reindeer, that awful chipmunk song, All I Want for Christmas Is You at the top of our lungs, then the one about the hippopotamus, anything loud and repetitive and grating. Over and over, no harmony, just volume and desperation. The statue stopped pouring, stood frozen in the window as flames crept closer behind it. Then it dropped the can slow, raised the knife with both hands, and drove it straight into its own chest, hard enough we heard the thunk even outside. Fire caught on the dry paint instantly, spread fast up the suit and beard. Whole thing going up like it was soaked in the gas after all. Melted and collapsed in on itself right there on our living room floor, while firefighters finally pulled up and started hosing everything down. They got the blaze under control eventually, saved most of the structure though the inside was gutted, smoke damage everywhere, furniture ruined, that horrible burned smell that took months to air out. Insurance called it accidental. leaking gas line from the stove or some bullshit explanation that let them pay out. We stayed in a hotel for weeks after, then a rental while contractors rebuilt slow. Dave never took the ashes when we offered what was left, said he was done collecting anything that looked like Santa forever. The kids still get quiet sometimes when carols come on. We don't talk about it much anymore, but every year we make the same rule out loud. No creepy gifts, no Santas that look wrong, nothing from weird auctions or estate sales. And sometimes late at night in December when the wind rattles the windows, I still hear those carols in my head, off-key and loud and desperate. And I'm glad we sang them because I don't know what else would have worked. I've been staring at this blank screen for hours now, fingers hovering over the keys, trying to find a way to start this without sounding like some unhinged lunatic posting at 3 a.m. after too many drinks, the kind of person you scroll past thinking they're just chasing internet points with a made-up story. It's been almost a year since last Christmas, and I still can't bring myself to put up a tree, not even one of those cheap little fake ones from the supermarket that don't drop needles. Sarah took the kids and left in June, packed up while I was at work, moved them up to her sister's place near Cairns where the air's thicker and the nights are louder with cicadas. She says the house feels wrong now, that she hears things scraping slow in the walls at night, like fingernails testing plaster, even though the pest guy came twice and swore there was nothing living in there but us. I stayed because selling it feels like admitting it won, whatever it is, like if I walk away, it gets to keep the place and maybe follow someone else home. The police report sits in a drawer upstairs with the other paperwork I can't throw out. Closed case, suspected prank by persons unknown, escalated to unlawful disposal of human remains, no suspects, no further leads. But they never explained the footage properly, never explained how that second box just materialized like the air folded in on itself. I watch the security clip sometimes when I can't sleep, frame by frame on the laptop in the dark, looking for a shadow I missed, a glitch, anything. There's nothing. Just the tree lights holding steady till midnight, then a single flicker like a power dip, and the box is there, ribbon already tied. We live, or live together I guess, in one of those newer suburbs west of Brisbane, the kind with identical cream-rendered walls and narrow driveways where you park nose to tail, where everyone waves but nobody really knows what goes on behind the blinds. Me and Sarah bought the place 8 years ago when Lily was just a baby, and we could still swing the mortgage on 2 decent jobs, back when weekends were barbecues and Bunnings runs instead of this quiet waiting. Tom came along a couple years later, loud and fearless from the start, and Christmas turned into this massive production because Sarah's family is huge and loud and refuses to do anything half-arsed. Lights strung along the guttering and across the fence the first weekend of December, no matter how hot it is. Fake snow sprayed in the corners of the windows, even though it's 35 degrees and the aircon's struggling. Presents stacked so high you have to move them to water the tree base. Last year was meant to be the biggest yet. Relatives in and out on Christmas Eve dropping off more food than we could eat in a week. Sarah's mum with her perfect pavlova and too many bottles of cheap sparkling, my brother turning up with a slab of beer and staying longer than planned. Kids absolutely wired on lollies and that fizzy red drink they only get once a year, running laps through the house till their cheeks were flushed and their eyes glassy. Dozens of gifts under the tree, some wrapped in the cheap stuff the kids colored on at school, some done flawless by Sarah's sister who's got that obsessive thing with corners and matching bows. There was one that didn't quite belong from the start. Flat black box, matte paper that swallowed the tree lights instead of reflecting them. About the size of a large shoebox, but thinner, heavier somehow when you nudged it with your foot. Tied with a single length of narrow silver ribbon knotted so perfectly it looked machined, no tag, no name scrawled in biro like the others. We noticed it Christmas morning when the chaos slowed down a bit, kids surrounded by new toys and half-eaten chocolate. But with everything happening, we just assumed it was from someone who forgot to label. Sarah's aunties do that all the time, or maybe something I'd ordered online after a few too many and blanked on. Didn't think twice about it. Left it off to the side while the frenzy went on, figured we'd sort it when heads were clearer. By evening, the living room looked like a bomb hit it. Paper shredded everywhere, boxes flattened and stacked by the door for council pickup, new gadgets already fighting for charger space. All the presents were claimed and put away except that black one, still sitting quiet under the lower branches like it was waiting its turn. Sarah started the family group chat, asking who the mystery gift was from, photos and everything. I texted a couple people directly, rang my brother when he didn't reply quick. Nobody knew. Nobody had brought anything that matched. We laughed it off over leftover ham sandwiches, probably turned up in someone's bag by mistake. Or some delivery driver dropped it at the wrong house and a neighbor snuck it under the tree thinking it was ours. We'd open it tomorrow once the hangover cleared. Put the kids to bed exhausted and happy, Lily clutching her new doll, Tom already asleep with his tablet on his chest. Cleaned up the worst of the mess, left the tree lights plugged in because Lily still likes the colored glow filtering down the hallway when she wakes up scared. Went to bed ourselves around midnight. House finally quiet, except the aircon rattling and the fridge humming in the kitchen. I woke up around 3:30 needing the bathroom, that dry mouth feeling you get from too much champagne and not enough water, head thick and throat raw. House was dead still, hot even with the cooling cranked, the kind of heat that presses down after a long day. Padded down the hall in bare feet, careful not to step on any stray Lego, used the toilet, splashed cold water on my face trying to wake up properly, then cut through the living room on the way back because it's quicker than looping through the kitchen. That's when I saw it. The box had moved. Wasn't tucked under the branches anymore. Sat dead center on the rug like someone placed it there deliberate, ribbon untied and laid out straight beside it. Lid lifted just a couple centimeters so a thin line of darkness showed. I stopped dead in the doorway, heart doing that sudden lurch it does when your brain catches up to your eyes. Walked over slow, checked the front door, deadbolt thrown, chain still on. Back door same, windows all latched against the humidity. Kids' doors still shut tight, no light underneath, no sound. Peeked in anyway, both of them out cold. Blankets kicked off because of the heat. Told myself one of them must have come down for water and got curious, even though the ribbon looked too neat for kid fingers, even though there were no little footprints in the glitter we'd sprayed on the floor. Went back to bed uneasy, lay there listening to Sarah breathe steady next to me. Slept shit the rest of the night waiting for another sound that never came. Boxing Day. We were all moving slow, heads pounding, dragging ourselves round the kitchen like zombies. Sarah made coffee strong enough to strip paint. Kids sprawled on the couch with their new tablets watching cartoons with the volume too loud. I shuffled into the living room to grab the box and finally see what the hell it was, maybe find a receipt inside or a card we missed. That's when the smell hit. Faint at first, like old coins left in a pocket or raw meat forgotten in the boot of the car, sour and metallic under the pine needles. The box was fully open now, lid set beside it with the edges lined up perfect, no crease in the paper. Inside was this bundle wrapped in thick clear plastic, the kind from the butcher, dark liquid pooled thick at the bottom, seeping slow into the cardboard base, turning it soft and dark. Sarah came in behind me carrying mugs, asked if I'd found anything yet, saw my face and stopped dead. I didn't touch it at first, just crouched down close enough to see through the fogged plastic. Pale skin mottled blue and purple, fingers curled stiff like they'd been holding something when rigor set in, knuckles swollen, thin gold wedding band pushed down over a knuckle that looked broken, severed clean at the wrist, bone ends white and jagged, blood still wet enough to drip in slow beads when the box had been moved. On top of the plastic, folded small and completely white, no blood on it at all, was a note. Neat, cursive handwriting, black ink that looked fresh. For the family that takes without giving back, this is only the first. Those who wait below grow hungry. Merry Christmas. Sarah made this noise behind me, half gasp, half choke, then bolted for the laundry sink off the kitchen, and was sick loud enough the kids came running asking what was wrong, voices high and scared. I told them to stay back, voice shaking so bad I barely recognized it. Dialed 000 with fingers that wouldn't work right first try, kept glancing at the box like it might move while I was on hold. Police were there in 10 minutes, uniforms first, then detectives. Whole house taped off while neighbors gathered out front in their dressing gowns pretending they weren't staring. They bagged the hand careful, took hundreds of photos, dusted every surface for prints. Nothing but ours. No forced entry anywhere. The hand belonged to some local bloke, rough sleeper who hung around the train station, been missing since early December. No connection to us anyone could find. No enemies. No debts. Case stayed open a while, made the local news for a day or two, then quietly closed, persons unknown. Probably some sick bastard's idea of a prank that got out of hand. But that wasn't the end. That wasn't even the beginning of the worst. I couldn't sleep proper after that. Kept every light on downstairs, checked locks 3-4 times a night, lay there in the dark listening to the house settle in the heat, every creak sounding like footsteps on carpet. Around 1 a.m., 2 nights later, I heard it. This soft, dragging sound, slow and patient, coming from the living room like something heavy being pulled inch by inch across the rug. Heart slammed so hard I felt it in my throat, got up quiet, grabbed the aluminum baseball bat I'd started keeping by the bed, crept down the hall with bare feet sticking to the floorboards. Tree lights were still plugged in. Sarah couldn't bring herself to touch the switch, and there in the exact center of the rug was another box. Same size, same matte black paper that drank the light, same silver ribbon tied in that perfect knot. No damp spots leading to it, no footprints in the glitter, nothing to show how it got there or who carried it in. I stood frozen in the doorway long enough to feel the air change, get colder somehow even though the night outside was still 30 degrees. The ribbon ends twitched, slow, like something inside was breathing against the lid, testing the give of the paper. Then the lid shifted, just a fraction, enough for that sour metallic smell to drift out stronger, mixed with something else, something damp and earthy like soil after rain. Sarah woke behind me, whispered my name sharp, grabbed my arm hard enough nails dug in through the skin. We backed away together, slow, didn't turn our backs till we reached the kids' rooms, carried them out half asleep without explaining, Lily mumbling about her doll, Tom heavy and hot in my arms. Threw overnight bags in the car, whatever we could grab in the dark, drove to Sarah's parents' place with the kids crying in the back seat, asking why we were leaving in the middle of the night. Called the police from the road, voice shaking so bad the operator asked me to repeat the address twice. They met us at the house next morning with dogs in full gear. Box was gone. No ribbon, no fibers, nothing. But I'd set up that cheap security camera in the corner the day after the first one, the one with the motion sensor I bought online and stuck up high with duct tape. Footage was crystal clear, tree lights holding steady till midnight exactly. Then they flickered once like a brownout, a single frame of static, and the box was just there. No blur of movement, no shadow crossing the lens, no person stepping into frame from any angle. Like reality skipped a beat and something edited itself in. We never spent another full night in that house. Stayed with Sarah's folks till we found a unit across town, sold the place cheap to some investor who flipped it without ever living there. New owners never mentioned anything odd as far as I know, but I drive past sometimes late and the tree lights are never on, even now in December, even when every other house on the street is lit up like airports. Still get mail forwarded, bills mostly, but every few months there's one thick black envelope, no return address, postmarked local, silver ribbon taped flat inside like a bookmark. I burn them in the kitchen sink unopened, watch the paper curl and the ribbon melt till there's nothing left but ash I flush twice. Whatever's down there, whatever waits and watches and keeps its own list, it doesn't need doors or windows. It knows when you've taken more than your share, time, love, second chances, whatever, and it balances the book slow. It knows addresses. It knows how you wrap your presents, how you leave the tree lights on for the kids. And it's patient. So if you wake up any morning in December, or the day after Christmas, or even weeks later when you think it's safe, and there's a present under your tree that wasn't there when you went to bed, black paper, silver ribbon, no tag, don't wonder who left it. Don't open it to see. Grab who you love and get out before the ribbon starts to move. Call the police from the car, from a motel, from anywhere else, because whatever's inside isn't a gift, it's an invoice, and the next one might have something that used to be yours. I've been trying to forget this for a year now, but every time December rolls around and I see those cabin rental ads popping up on my feed, secluded mountain getaway, perfect for a quiet family Christmas, stone fireplace, wraparound deck, no neighbors for miles, it all floods back in a rush, this cold, heavy sickness that settles in my chest, like I've swallowed a handful of snow that won't melt. We almost didn't make it out alive. Sarah still won't come back to the house we're renting now in the suburbs. Took the kids to her mum's place up the coast near Byron and only comes down for a day or two at a time when she has to. She says she can still smell it on her clothes sometimes. Thick pine needles mixed with old wood smoke and something darker, Something rotten and sweet that clings to the back of your throat no matter how many times you shower or wash everything in hot water. The kids have nightmares still. Wake up screaming about a man in red standing over their beds. The police wrote the whole thing off as carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty old wood stove causing mass hallucination and paranoia. Closed the file quick before it could hit the papers or make the local news cycle drag on. But we know what we saw. We know what we fought. And we still have the scars, some visible, some not, to prove it wasn't in our heads. It was meant to be the year we fixed everything, put the pieces back together. Work had been absolutely crushing me for 18 months straight, 70, 80-hour weeks sometimes, coming home too exhausted to do anything but collapse on the couch, Sarah and I barely speaking except to argue over money or whose turn it was to handle school pickup or why the house was always a mess. The kids were taking the brunt of it. Ethan, 10 going on 15, full of this quiet, burning anger that came out in fights at school and slammed doors at home, getting notes sent back that we had to sign. Mia, only 7, and already waking up crying from nightmares she couldn't put words to, clinging to Sarah like she was afraid to let go. We needed to get away from the city, from the routine, somewhere with no signal half the time, no distractions, just forced togetherness to remind us why we started this in the first place. I was scrolling late one night, half a bottle of beer in, when I found the cabin on one of those private rental sites, not the big polished ones like Airbnb, buried pages deep where the listings look a bit rougher, photos grainy but promising. 3 good-sized bedrooms, huge wraparound deck, 40 private acres tucked up in the Blue Mountains west of Sydney, snow already thick on the ground even though it was only early December. Listed way too cheap for the size and location, almost half what similar places were asking. Photos showed exactly what we needed. Heavy, dark timber walls, massive river stone fireplace taking up one whole wall of the living room, wide floor-to-ceiling windows looking out into nothing but dense trees and white, even a proper metal tree stand bolted to the floor in the corner like it was waiting for us. Owner went by, just Nick, no last name in the messages, said it was available last minute because a family had canceled suddenly, offered a big cash discount if we paid half up front through direct transfer and the rest on arrival. No reviews showing, which should have been a flag, but the pictures sold it hard, and we were desperate for something to change. We booked it sight unseen, no questions. Drove up on the 23rd. Roads perfectly fine until the sealed pavement ended, and the gravel track started winding uphill, snow getting deeper the higher we went, tires crunching slow and steady, low branches scraping along the roof of the SUV like fingernails testing the paint. The track narrowed to barely 1 lane wide, trees crowding in tight on both sides so the headlights just cut tunnels through the dark. No other cars, no houses, nothing. The cabin sat alone at the very end like it had been dropped there. Dark timber walls weathered almost black with age and wet, roof sagging a little under the snow load, chimney already trailing a thin, lazy line of smoke because the owner had messaged he'd light the fire ahead to take the worst of the chill off. Key was under the welcome mat exactly where he said, door heavy old wood that groaned loud when we pushed it open like it hadn't been used in a while. Inside hit us hard and immediate. That strong wave of pine cleaner and fresh burning cedar that felt welcoming at first, warm and cozy, but underneath it this faint sour damp rot that made you swallow hard and wonder if something had died in the walls. Fire was crackling high already, logs stacked neat beside it like someone had just been there. And hanging on the rough-hewn mantel above the hearth, 5 stockings already up, red felt with white cuffs going soft with age, names stitched in shaky, uneven glitter glue that looked like a child had done it years ago. Dad, Mom, Ethan, Mia, and 1 extra at the very end that just said guest in the same handwriting. Sarah gave this small, uneasy laugh when she saw them, said probably leftover from whatever family stayed last, or maybe the owner's weird idea of making it feel homey for renters. We left it hanging there. Felt wrong somehow to pull it down, like we'd be starting off on the bad foot. First full day was almost good, almost what we'd hoped for. Kids exploded out of the car the second we parked, boots crunching straight into the knee-deep snow, started building this lopsided snowman right by the deck with stick arms that stuck out awkward like it was reaching for the door, face made from pine cones that looked too much like eyes. Sarah and I hauled in the bags and boxes, Set up our fake tree in the metal stand by the biggest window, strung the multicolored lights slow while the fire popped and snapped behind us, filling the place with that warm glow. Made thick hot chocolate with the little marshmallows the kids go crazy for, played that cheesy Christmas playlist on the portable speaker we brought because the cabin radio was busted. Snow kept falling steady outside, big fat flakes that muffled everything, no other houses in sight, no road noise, no planes overhead, just us and the trees and the quiet. That night, we filled the stockings with the small stuff we'd packed: chocolates, new socks, little puzzle books, torch key rings that flashed different colors, hung them back up careful, put the bigger presents under the tree branches, went to bed early with the house feeling warm and creaking gently as the wood settled in the heat. Kids out cold down the hall in their room. I woke around 2:30 in the morning with my throat raw and dry from the stove heat pumping out, needing water bad enough I couldn't ignore it. House was pitch dark, except for the low embers glowing behind the fireplace glass, casting long twitching shadows across the beam ceilings. Padded downstairs in just socks, trying not to step on any of the kids' toys they'd left scattered, past the tree. The stockings looked fatter than when we'd filled them, heavier somehow, like someone had added weight while we slept. Thought Sarah must have snuck down after me with extra little things, smiled at that in the dark. Got a glass of water from the kitchen sink, stood there drinking slow, staring out the big window over the sink at the snow still coming down thick and steady, flakes swirling in the deck light we'd left on outside. That's when I saw the shape the first time. Tall, broad figure standing just past the railing in a long red coat gone dark with wet snow, hood up or hat pulled low so the face was lost in shadow, standing completely motionless like a statue, watching the house straight on with this weight you could almost feel through the glass. Thought at first it was the owner coming back to check the fire, or some neighbor we didn't know lived nearby. But when I blinked hard and looked again, the shape was gone. Just the snow filling in slow, and a single line of big deep boot prints leading straight from the tree line to the deck steps and stopping dead like whoever made them stepped up and vanished. Heart thumping loud in my ears, I checked the front door, deadbolt thrown firm, chain still on. Back door same, windows all latched tight against the cold. Kids' doors still shut, no light underneath, no sound when I cracked them open. Both out cold, blankets kicked off because the upstairs was warmer. Told myself it was tired eyes playing tricks in the dark, or maybe a trick of the light on a tree stump, went back to bed, but lay there staring at the ceiling a long time, listening to every small creak the house made. Didn't mention it to Sarah in the morning. Didn't want to start the day wrong. Christmas Eve. The snow turned into a proper blizzard, wind howling around the eaves, roads completely vanished under drifts taller than the car. No chance of driving anywhere for supplies or even a change of scenery. We stayed bunkered inside, baked Anzac biscuits with chocolate chips because it's the recipe Sarah's mom always uses this time of year. Watched old Christmas movies on the laptop since the cabin TV couldn't pick up any signal that high up. Kids built blanket forts on the big rug in front of the fire, fought loud over whose turn it was on the switch we'd brought as their big shared present. Around dusk, the power started flickering hard. Lights dimmed low, came back weak, dimmed again longer each time like something was pulling too much. Fire was roaring high to compensate, but the house still felt colder in the corners, like the warmth couldn't push all the way out. Ethan swore up and down he heard boots on the roof, slow and deliberate thumps circling from one end to the other, stopping right over the chimney. We told him it was branches heavy with snow shifting in the wind, but Sarah and I exchanged this long look across the room, both knowing the trees were too far from the roofline for that. That night, we put the kids to bed early after they opened their one present, new pajamas each, soft flannel that made them look small again, and read them the night before Christmas, even though Ethan rolled his eyes and pretended he was too old. They finally passed out clutching new stuffed toys. Sarah and I stayed up longer wrapping the last few presents by firelight alone, drinking red wine straight from the bottle because digging out glasses felt like too much effort. Around midnight, we heard it clear and unmistakable, soft, heavy thump overhead. Then another, slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the shingles toward the chimney stack like someone big testing the weight. Sarah froze with the bottle halfway to her mouth, eyes wide. We waited, breath held. Nothing came down the flue. No cascade of soot, no sound after a long, stretched minute. Laughed it off nervous, voices too loud in the quiet, Said possums or maybe a wallaby up there somehow. Finished the wine quick and went to bed with the fire poker leaning close by the bedroom door just in case. Didn't sleep much. Christmas morning, the kids woke us before dawn screaming that Santa had come. Ran downstairs ahead of us, voices echoing loud off the beams. We followed slower, hearts already tight from the night before, pulling on robes against the chill that had crept in overnight. The living room looked wrong in the gray morning light filtering weak through snow-heavy windows. Presents under the tree were more than we'd placed the night before. Extra bundles wrapped in rough brown paper and tied with coarse twine, old-fashioned things inside like wooden trains with chipped paint and rag dolls with button eyes and stitched mouths, stuff that looked like it belonged in a museum or an attic no one had opened in decades. Stockings overflowed, heavy with things we hadn't bought, hard candies in wax paper, small carved animals, tiny books with yellowed pages. The guest stocking hung limp and completely empty now, cuff turned inside out like something had climbed out. And on the hearth, big black boot prints pressed deep in thick soot leading straight from the fireplace across the rug to the tree, circling it once and back again, deep enough the fibers were crushed flat. Sarah went white as paper, grabbed the kids back hard from touching anything. I checked the flue careful, closed tight, chain rusted solid in place. No way anything human-sized came down without ripping it apart. We tried desperately to keep the day normal for the kids, opened the presents we recognized, made bacon and eggs on the gas stove since the power was still flaky, played outside in the snow till their cheeks burned red and they were laughing again. But the air inside felt thick and watchful, like the walls were listening. That sour rot smell grew stronger hour by hour, clinging to the back of your throat so you tasted it with every breath. Afternoon, the kids were dragging couch cushions across the rug for another blanket fort when Mia let out this sharp, piercing scream that froze blood. We ran in to find her backed against the far wall, finger-pointing shaking at the mantel. The 4 family stockings were dripping slow and steady, dark red soaking through the felt from the inside out, running down the rough stone in thin lines, pooling small but growing on the hearth below. Not much volume, just enough to stain permanent and smell metallic sharp. Sarah snatched them down fast with trembling hands, stuffed the whole lot into a garbage bag quick, told the kids it was old dye packets or burst pens from the puzzle books leaking in the heat, but her voice cracked bad and the kids weren't buying it. We took the bag outside and burned it in the fire pit, watched the plastic melt and bubble and the fabric catch, smoke rising thick black and greasy into the white sky. Power died for good just before proper dark. Phones no bars at all, no matter how high we held them. Snow too deep to even dream of digging the car out before spring maybe. Just the fire for light and what little heat it pushed out. We barricaded ourselves in the living room, pushed the heavy couch against the bottom of the stairs, told the kids it was an indoor camping adventure to keep them calm, huddled together on blankets and sleeping bags pulled down from upstairs. Sat there watching the flames die lower inch by inch, telling quiet stories and singing half-remembered carols to keep the kids' minds off the dark pressing against the windows. But every small creak overhead sounded deliberate, every gust rattling the panes like knuckles knocking slow and patient. Around 10, the kids finally passed out tangled together on the rug, exhausted from the weird day. Sarah and I sat back to back on the floor, fire poker and the small axe from the woodpile close between us, too scared to close our eyes for more than a minute. Then he appeared. Fireplace erupted without warning, soot and burning embers showering out across the hearthrug in a black cloud. The iron damper screeched loud as it bent inward, massive red-gloved hand forcing it open with raw strength. He dropped heavy into the hearth like a sack of coal, ash billowing up thick enough to choke, knife already drawn long and crusted dark along the edge, lunged straight toward the stairs where we'd just woken hard. I grabbed the poker, swung wild and desperate, metal clanging against the blade in cold sparks that burned where they landed. Sarah dragged the screaming kids toward the back door. Handle turned, but the deadbolt was frozen solid like ice had welded it overnight. He kept coming slow and relentless, knife slashing air close enough I felt the chill off the edge bite skin. Stockings on the mantel swelled again, sudden, fabric stretching, then burst open one by one, thick black tendrils pouring out like veins, snaking fast across the ceiling beams. He materialized solid behind them in the kitchen doorway, knife slashing downward hard. I tackled him full force into the Christmas tree, ornaments exploding in showers of glass, lights sparking electric blue against the dry branches. Grappled among the needles and wires, his skin ice-burn cold against mine, beard scratching like wire across my face. Sarah smashed a heavy split log across his back with both hands. He crashed forward through the big picture window in an explosion of glass and snow, body tumbling out onto the deck. We ran to look. Broken pane resealed itself behind him slow, frost crawling thick across the jagged edges like it had never shattered. Footsteps started circling overhead, deliberate and heavy, shaking dust from the beams. I climbed the pull-down ladder into the attic, pushed out a small vent hatch onto the snow-covered roof, slippery as glass. He was already waiting in the moonlight at the far end, knife glinting wet. Chase broke out wild across the steep shingles, sliding uncontrolled, grabbing the frozen gutter to stop from pitching over the edge into dark 30 feet down. He slashed low at legs, blade biting through boot leather and skin sharply cold. I kicked a long icicle loose from the eaves, used it like a spear stabbing hard at the red coat while he tried dragging me bodily to the chimney edge to throw me down the stack. Back door rattled hard sudden, then splintered inward with a crack that echoed. He forced his way through the narrow frame, knife carving long, deep gashes in the wood as he pushed, splinters flying. I swung the heavy cast-iron pan from the stove hook, clanging against the blade in showers of sparks. Sarah boiled water fast on the gas burner, hurled the whole pot, scalding steam hissing against his face, skin blistering and peeling back in wet sheets before it knit itself together again, slow. He kept pressing forward, knife nicking my arm deep, cold burning worse than fire. He phased straight through the upstairs wall into the kids' room like plaster wasn't there, loomed huge over their beds, knife raised high. Ethan woke first, grabbed the hockey stick from under his bed, swung hard, cracking across the ghost's knee with a sound like splitting wood. Mia threw her bedside lamp full force, bulb exploding in a shower of glass that cut but didn't slow him. He backhanded Ethan casual across the room into the wall, hard enough plaster cracked. I burst in roaring, tackled him full body out the open window, crashed together onto the deck below in a tangle of red cloth and fury, knife slashing ribs, shallow but freezing deep. Narrow upstairs hallway became a bottleneck, no room to swing big. I had the small axe from the woodpile. He advanced with the long knife. Blows clanged and sparked, axe head biting deep into the doorframe as he dodged unnaturally fast. Knife sliced arms and chest, each cut the cold fire pain spreading. Sarah joined from the other end, blasting the fire extinguisher fully into his face, thick foam blinding long enough for me to land a solid overhand axe blow that sent him staggering backward down the stairs in a crash of breaking banister. Dawn finally leaked gray through the windows. We made a desperate break for the car, smashed a bedroom window with the axe, climbed out into snow waist-deep, half carrying the kids. He appeared sudden between us and the SUV, blocking the path, forcing us toward the frozen lake behind the cabin. Terrifying pursuit across cracking ice. He smashed through thin patches with the knife to grab at legs pulling down, blade stabbing upward through the surface trying to hook ankles. I pulled with a fallen branch carrying Mia piggyback. Sarah slipped on a weak spot and went under to her waist, me hauling her out just as the red arm broke through reaching pale fingers for her boot. Backed into the living room again with nowhere left to run, we made our final stand around the dying fire. He advanced relentless, knife carving fresh warnings deep into the log walls as he closed in, letters bleeding sap. We hurled burning logs straight at him, coat caught flame bright temporary, fire crawling up the sleeves. Sarah used the long bellows to blast roaring flames into his face, keeping him back long enough. Ethan noticed he always drifted back toward the hearth no matter where we drove him. We worked together frantic, levered the biggest stones loose from the chimney front, collapsed the whole stack onto him in an avalanche of rock and glowing ember, burying the red shape under tons of rubble, just as the first weak light of morning hit the windows and the snow finally stopped falling. We escaped through the smashed bedroom window, dug the car free with raw bleeding hands, drove down the mountain sliding sideways half the time on ice, didn't stop till we hit town and phone signal and people, told the police everything in shaking detail, led them back up with four-wheel drives and guns. Cabin was empty, fire-cold ashes, walls clean and unmarked, No gouges, no soot prints, no collapsed chimney, no extra presents. Owner's details completely fake. Listing gone from the site, bank account closed overnight. No trace the transfer ever happened. But the locals pulled up old newspaper scans once they heard the description. Cabin burned deliberately to the ground. Christmas night 1987. Family of 4 murdered inside by an intruder dressed as Santa. Multiple knife wounds. Killer never caught. Body never found. Fire ruled arson, but no accelerant traces ever explained it. We don't do Christmas anymore. No tree, no lights, no stockings, no trips anywhere even slightly remote. Sarah won't let the kids near anything red and white together, won't watch Santa movies or let carols play in the car. Some nights I still wake up smelling thick pine and old blood and smoke, hearing slow, deliberate boots crossing a roof that isn't there anymore. If you're scrolling those cabin rentals this December, pretty photos, too good price, last-minute availability, check the history hard. Check newspapers from 30, 40 years back. Check if anyone ever stayed and didn't come home, because some places keep their Christmas guests forever. And he's still there, patient under the stones, waiting for the next family naughty enough to book a stay. I've been waiting to write this down until the holidays were well and truly over, until the stores stopped blasting those endless carols on repeat, and the neighbors finally took down their lights and those god-awful inflatable Santas that bob in the wind like they're laughing at you, because every time I think about last Christmas, I feel this cold, razor-sharp dread slice up my spine like something heavy and patient is still perched on the roof, waiting for the next chance to force its way down the chimney. My kids are with my sister now, staying up north in her cramped house where it's always loud with her own family and the TV never off. And they ask sometimes in these small, quiet voices why we don't put up a tree anymore or leave cookies and milk out on the table like we used to. I tell them we're taking a long break this year, that Santa's got enough houses to visit without bothering with ours, but the truth is, I can't look at a chimney without feeling my stomach drop straight through the floor. Can't hear some mall Santa bellow, ho ho ho, without spinning around fast to see if it's him coming for the rest of us. The police called it a home invasion gone wrong, said the intruder must have slipped on the icy roof mid-break-in or been startled and fled in panic, leaving parts behind in some kind of psychotic message. But they didn't see what dropped those boxes through the flue. They didn't hear the wet dragging sounds from above or watch the milk glass disappear down that thing's stretching throat with the crunch of shards moving visible under the skin. They didn't clean up what was inside the wrapping, didn't mop the thick red that soaked through the cardboard and into my carpet for days. My ex-wife Claire was the kind of person who turns every single thing into a battlefield, who needs to win even when there's nothing left but scorched earth and broken people. We split 3 years ago after she decided I wasn't ambitious enough for the new life she wanted, took the kids most of the time through lawyers who cost more than our house was worth, made sure my visitation was always supervised or cut short with some last-minute excuse about schedules or sudden illness, or the kids aren't feeling up to it. Christmas was her absolute favorite weapon, the one time of year she could guarantee maximum damage. First year after the divorce, she showed up drunk just after midnight on Christmas Eve, banged on the door with both fists till the windows rattled and the kids woke upstairs crying for me, left a tall stack of presents on the porch that turned out to be empty boxes wrapped pretty with big bows just to mess with their heads when they opened them in the morning and found nothing inside. Second year she got a restraining order temporarily lifted for the children's sake, came inside the second I opened the door a crack to hand over her gifts, trashed the tree ornaments one by one, smashing the glass ones on the floor, ripping the handmade paper chains the kids had spent hours on, screaming the whole time about how I'd ruined everything, how the kids would hate me when they grew up and realized what a failure I was, stayed screaming and throwing things till cops dragged her out kicking and spitting. Last year she sent texts and emails and voicemails for weeks leading up, photos of the kids with mall Santas I wasn't invited to, messages saying she'd be coming Christmas Eve to make things right for them no matter what, that they needed their mom on the big night even if some judge said otherwise. I knew exactly what that meant. She'd show up high or drunk or both, eyes wild, force her way in if I didn't open willingly, play the perfect loving mother for an hour handing out bigger, better presents than mine to make me look small, then turn on me sudden in front of the kids, scream and cry and break things, and hit if I tried to stop her, until someone called the police again and she got to play victim all over. I wasn't letting it happen a third time. not with the kids finally old enough to remember every detail forever. I'd reinforced everything after the last disaster. New reinforced steel core door with 4 separate high-security deadbolts that took 2 minutes to unlock from inside. Security cameras front and back with night vision and motion alerts straight to my phone. Floodlights outside that snapped on bright enough to blind anyone creeping close. The chimney was the one spot I obsessed over. She'd joked about it in one of her drunk, rambling voicemails. "Maybe I'll come down like Santa this year, ho ho ho, better watch out, better not cry." So I had a pro come out in November and install a heavy-gauge steel cap locked from inside with a padlock, triple-layered reinforced screen bolted solid across the flue opening with screws long enough to bite deep into brick. Stockings were hung because the kids still wanted the tradition when they were with me those weeks. Soft red felt with their names stitched in glitter. And I left out the cookies and milk on the coffee table for show, to keep whatever magic was left alive a little longer for them. Kids were with me full Christmas this year. Court finally gave me the whole holiday block after Claire missed too many drop-offs, and they went to bed early after way too much hot chocolate and excitement about morning, coughing a little from the colds they'd picked up at school the week before, but out cold fast after some nighttime medicine that knocked them deep and dreamless. I kissed them both goodnight, tucked the covers tight around their shoulders, promised Santa would come quiet while they slept and leave something special. I stayed up alone in the living room after that, all the main lights off except the colored glow from the tree, reflecting off tinsel and glass ornaments in slow shifting patterns across the walls. Fire going strong in the hearth because it was freezing outside, and the old house heat struggled some nights against the wind. Presents stacked neat under the branches. Bigger ones from me this year to make up for lost time and show them I was still here. Shotgun loaded with buckshot leaning against the recliner arm within easy reach, phone charged and open on the coffee table beside the milk glass and cookie plate, alarm app running silent with every camera feed tiled small on the screen. Coffee kept hot in a big thermos because I wasn't risking even a minute of sleep, eyes burning but open, watching the front door and the fireplace both. Around 1 a.m., I started thinking maybe she'd finally given up for real. Maybe the new boyfriend had talked some sense into her, or she'd passed out somewhere else causing trouble for strangers. Around 2, I let myself hope a fraction, shifted in the chair to ease the ache in my back. Around 3, I started dozing upright against my will, head nodding forward, telling myself just a minute with eyes closed, alarm set loud on the phone. Then the first thump hit the roof, heavy enough to rattle every picture frame on the walls and send fine dust sifting down from the beams overhead like dirty snow. I jerked awake hard, shotgun in hand instant, heart slamming against ribs loud in my ears. Second thump heavier, like something big and solid landing deliberate from height onto the shingles right above the living room. Footsteps started then, slow, deliberate, crossing from one end of the house to the chimney, each step booming through the ceiling like mortar rounds going off, shaking the light fixture till it swung. I backed up 5 or 6 steps from the fireplace, breathed deep to steady the shake in my hands, aimed high ready for tiles to crack or her to start yelling drunk and threatening through the vents like she'd done before. But then came the scream, Claire's voice unmistakable even through the roof, high and raw and absolutely terrified, starting loud like she'd seen something impossible and cutting off sudden with this wet choke like someone clamped a hand over her mouth or snapped her neck sideways. Dragging sounds after that, heavy and wet and scraping, pulled slow toward the chimney stack with thumps like limbs hitting the gutter. My brain split 3 ways at once, call 911 right now and risk whatever was up there hearing, get the kids and hide them in the basement, shoot through the roof if something came down the flue. Fireplace exploded before I could choose. Heavy reinforced screen bent inward with a metallic screech that hurt teeth. Bricks cracking loud along mortar lines, massive cloud of black soot and burning embers blasting out hot across the rug and coffee table, stinging eyes and filling lungs with choking ash that tasted like old graves. I coughed hard, eyes streaming tears, gripping the shotgun tight enough my knuckles went white. Wasn't prepared for this. Not at all. Not for something that could bend steel like tinfoil. Nor was I prepared for what unfolded slow and deliberate from the flue opening. It rose tall and massive, head scraping the ceiling beams as it straightened inch by inch, body huge under layers of torn, dirty red cloth piled thick like old coats rotting together in a pile. White trim matted yellow and brown with age and worse. Face gray shriveled tight over sharp bone like mummified meat left too long in open air. Ragged white hair hanging in clumps stained dark red at the ends like it had been dipped fresh. Belly distended huge and lumpy. Gray skin stretched thin and veined like something alive shifted and pushed inside trying to tear out. Empty black sockets where eyes should be, fixed on me unblinking with this weight that made the room feel smaller. Long skeletal arm reached out from the rags, slow, clawed fingers yellow and cracked, dropping a plain brown package tied with rough twine. Wet, heavy squelch loud when it hit the rug, thick, dark red seeping through cardboard fast, spreading slow across the fibers. It pulled two more from deep inside the clothing, smaller boxes wrapped same, placed them neat beside the first like arranging presents careful under a tree for someone special. Turned its head slow to the coffee table, wrapped that massive hand around the milk glass careful not to crush, mouth pushing out sudden from the thick beard, fanged wide, protruding unnatural like a deep-sea horror filmed in nightmare light. Swallowed glass whole, crunch loud and grinding down its throat as shards moved visible bulging under the gray skin. Grabbed cookie plate same way, shoved it in whole, ceramic cracking sharp between rows of teeth, crumbs and blood flecks falling from the corners. Chewed slow and deliberate, sockets never leaving me once, like it was tasting more than cookies and milk, deciding if I was next on whatever list it kept. Then it crouched low, sudden, muscles rippling visible under the stretched skin, shot back up the chimney fast as it came with a rush of cold air that killed the fire embers dead. Feet hit the roof heavy overhead one last time, low guttural moan starting, Om, deep and vibrating through bones and floorboards and teeth, fading slow as the steps moved away into the night and the wind. I dropped to my knees, shaking so bad the shotgun clattered away, pushed it farther with one hand, cried hard into my sleeve till I could breathe again without choking on ash. Kids never woke once, medicine strong enough to keep them under through anything. When I could move, I crawled to the packages, hands trembling bad, peeled back the soaked cardboard on the biggest. Claire's head stared up, eyes wide, frozen in terror, mouth open mid-scream like the sound had been cut off permanent, cut clean below the jaw with bone ends white and jagged, blood still pooled thick in the bottom. Second box, her hands. Fingers bent wrong at impossible angles like every bone snapped deliberate, nails torn and bloody like she'd clawed desperate at something hard and unyielding. Smallest, a clear ziplock heavy with her tongue swollen purple and bitten through, teeth marks deep. Called police after that, voice barely working, said intruder left remains of my ex-wife as some kind of threat or message. Blood thick on the roof in long dragged streaks, soot everywhere, no way to hide or explain. They came heavy with lights and dogs, questioned me for hours under bright lamps, woke the kids gentle but thorough, searched every inch of the house and the yard, found her car abandoned a mile away down the road, keys still in ignition, driver door open, phone smashed on the pavement. No note, no struggle signs inside. My alibi solid. Kids asleep deep, cameras showing roof disturbance only starting at 3:27 a.m. No one entering doors or windows. Case opened big but went nowhere fast. No suspects. No motive beyond possible domestic escalation. Kids and I spent actual Christmas Day in a cheap hotel off the highway. Opened the presents quiet in the room with the curtains drawn. Ate the continental breakfast buffet like zombies while other families laughed loud around us. Told them later their mom had a bad accident, was gone now for good. They cried hard, but they're young enough the sharp edges will dull eventually. I've been trying to push this memory down for a year now, burying it under work and routine and anything that keeps my mind busy. But every time the holidays creep in and I see families posting those perfect Christmas dinner photos or talking about their quirky little traditions that make the season special, I feel this hot wave of nausea rise up like bile I can't swallow back down, this burning in my throat that tastes like iron and fat and something spoiled. My old friend Mark, he's not my friend anymore. Haven't spoken to him since I blocked him on everything the day I got out of the hospital, deleted every photo, burned the old college yearbooks in the backyard fire pit till the pages curled black, invited me to his family's place for a Christmas Eve dinner last year, said his parents were doing the full traditional spread, prime rib slow roasted with herbs, homemade Yorkshire puddings, All the sides you could want. That they'd love to finally meet the guy he'd told so many stories about over the years. I was alone that year, no girlfriend to speak of. Family scattered across states or gone for good, so I said sure, why not? Sounded like the kind of warm, normal night I needed after too many quiet ones. Packed an overnight bag just in case the snow got bad, grabbed a decent bottle of red from the liquor store on the way, drove the 3 hours north into the hills where the snow was already piling up thick on the roads. Tires slipping a little on the last stretch. House lights glowing warm through the bare trees like every normal holiday postcard you've ever seen. Smoke curling from the chimney promising a fire inside. The place was this big old rambling farmhouse set way back from the road, porch sagging a little under the weight of long icicles dripping slow in the cold, windows fogged from the heat inside. Mark met me at the door with this big, wide grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, hugged me hard enough to squeeze the air out, took my coat and bag like he was playing host perfect, introduced me to his folks right there in the foyer. His dad, tall and broad with hands like bear paws calloused rough. His mom small but sharp-eyed, smiling too wide and too long. His sister Emily, who I'd met once years ago at a barbecue and remembered as sweet but a little distant, always watching from the edges. Everyone welcoming over the top, pouring wine generous right away into heavy glasses that clinked too loud, house smelling heavy of roasting meat and spices, and this underlying sour note like old blood baked into the walls that I couldn't place at first but made my stomach turn a little. Dinner table set fancy in the dining room off the kitchen. Long dark wood scarred from years, candles flickering high in silver holders throwing shadows that danced wrong on the wallpaper, china plates old and chipped at the edges, big platters already out steaming with carved meat thick and dark swimming in gravy, mashed potatoes whipped creamy, roasted roots glazed shiny, the works looking magazine perfect. They kept topping my glass every time I took a sip, asking normal questions at first. How's work going? Remember that time in college when we almost got arrested? You still play guitar like you used to? Everything feeling easy and warm and a little fuzzy from the wine till his dad set down his fork slow and deliberate, clapped those massive hands once loud in the quiet, said it was time for the real tradition now, the one that made Christmas mean something deep and lasting in their family. They called it Secret Santa, but the way they said it with this hungry edge made the room feel suddenly smaller, the air thicker. Mark's mom brought out this old carved wooden bowl from the locked sideboard, dark with age, and what looked like old deep stains soaked in permanent, filled with folded slips of heavy paper yellowed at the edges. Everyone drew one slow, including me, they insisted, laughing low, saying I was part of the family tonight whether I liked it or not. No getting out of the circle now that I'd eaten their food and drunk their wine. Names written inside in thick red ink that looked too fresh. Whoever you drew, you had to give them a literal piece of yourself. Something small to start, they said with smiles stretching wide, but real enough to hurt, something you could live without but would miss forever after. A thick lock of hair pulled from the root with blood at the follicle, a fingernail pried clean off the bed with pliers, a tooth knocked loose if you were feeling the spirit strong, a strip of skin sliced thin from somewhere hidden like the inner arm or behind the ear. Then the person who received it had to cook it right there at the table. Drop it sizzling on the cast iron platter they kept glowing hot over sterno flames in the center. Season it with the special coarse salt they passed around in a little bone dish. Sear it crisp or rare depending on the piece. Eat it slow and deliberate so it became part of them forever, bound inside blood and bone. They talked about it casual, like discussing favorite recipes or old family stories, his dad rolling up his sleeve slow to show this pale ridged scar running long on his forearm, thick and keloid like it had never healed right, saying it was from giving his own father a good strip years back when he was my age, that they'd grilled it rare over the flames and shared it bite by bite, that he still felt his dad's strength flowing in him every time he lifted something heavy or squeezed hard. Emily smiled wide, showing a dark gap where a back molar used to be, tongue probing the empty socket absent. Said her brother Mark had taken it gentle but firm with pliers one year after she drew his name, that she'd boiled it soft in rich broth with herbs, and swallowed it whole to keep him close always, no matter how far life took them. Mark just nodded slow, eyes locked on me unblinking, saying it started generations ago as a way to bind blood tight against the cold world outside. That no one ever truly left the family once they'd shared real living pieces. That the eaten part lived on inside, carrying memories and strength. I laughed at first. This nervous, sharp bark that echoed wrong in the room. Thought it was some elaborate twisted prank to freak the outsider. Waited for them to crack up and pour more wine and say gotcha. But their faces stayed serious, hungry almost. Eyes bright and glassy in the candlelight, like they were waiting impatient for me to understand how special and sacred it was, how it made them closer than any normal family could dream. I said no thanks. I'd sit this one out, maybe watch and learn for next year. But Mark's dad stood up slow and deliberate, blocking the only doorway to the hall. Voice calm but heavy, saying no one leaves the circle once it's started, that the tradition only works if everyone gives willingly and takes fully, that bad luck and worse comes to houses where someone refuses or tries to run halfway. His mom reached over casual and turned up the volume on the old record player in the corner, this Christmas carol starting low. Jingle bells, but slow and off-pitch, notes bending backward and warped like a tape played in reverse, voices deep and guttural chanting underwater from far away, the sound crawling inside my head, immediate making teeth ache and vision blur at the edges. They turned it higher, said it helped open the mind wide, cleared out doubt and fear and weakness, so the giving felt pure and the taking felt right. The reversed sound burrowed deeper, pressure building behind eyes till warm trickles started running from my ears, blood slow and hot down my neck, soaking collar. I stood up fast, then saying I was leaving now, thanks for dinner but I really had to go, grabbed my phone to call a ride or something, but Mark and his dad moved quicker than they should have. Grabbed my arms hard enough. Fingers dug deep bruises instant, slammed me back into the heavy wooden chair with force that knocked breath out, held me pinned while Emily wrapped the extension cords from the string of Christmas lights around my wrists and chest and legs tight enough to cut skin raw, cords biting in with every twist, little bulbs blinking red and green frantic against my shirt as they pulled tighter. Mom brought out the big kitchen shears sharp and heavy, the kind for poultry bones, said a finger would be perfect for a first-timer. Something useful with knuckle and tendon to chew, or maybe an ear. They'd sear it quick on the hot platter over the flames, slice it thin with the carving knife, serve it with the special gravy thick and dark so it became part of me forever inside them all, my strength and fear living on in their blood. I fought then hard and desperate, bucked wild till the chair legs scraped loud on the floor and one cracked, cords cutting deeper into wrists with every twist, blood warm and slick running down arms pooling on the tablecloth. But they held tighter, Dad's massive hand clamping over my mouth muffling screams, fingers squeezing nose shut till spots danced black and lungs burned for air, Mom pinching the webbing between thumb and finger hard to make me open wide. Emily took the shears smiling soft, clipped a thick lock of hair first from the scalp pulling roots with blood dots, dropped it hissing on the platter where it curled black and smoked acrid, made me watch them fork it up neat, and eat it slow, chewing with eyes closed like savoring. Then the fingernail. Pushed the clippers cold under the thumbnail, slow and deliberate. Pried it up with this wet popping tear. Pain exploding, white-hot shooting up arm like fire, blood welling fast and dripping steady. Dropped the nail curved and bloody on the platter, seared it, crisp bubbling, passed pieces around on forks, chewing loud and open, watching me while the reversed music drilled louder into skull. Ears bleeding steady now down neck hot, sound like knives twisting inside brain. The meat platter they carved fresh after that, thick slices from what they said proud was the neighbor's big dog they'd adopted special for the occasion when it wandered close. But other cuts longer and paler, marble different with fat layers thin, bones showing knuckle shapes too human. Said it was from last year's guest who'd tried to run same as me halfway through, who'd given more than asked in the end when the cords got tighter and the flames got closer. Forced a big piece between my teeth, hot and fatty dripping, held jaw shut with iron grip pinching nerves till I gagged it down, choking on gristle, taste heavy iron and salt and wrongness coating tongue thick, stomach heaving, but nothing came up. They weren't anywhere near finished. Dragged me outside after the eating, snow whipping sideways, blinding white in the dark, blindfold tied rough over eyes already soaked with blood and tears and snot, shoved me hard against the big old pine in the front yard, bark rough scraping back, wrapped the Christmas light cords around torso and arms and legs, pulling vicious tight enough to cut circulation instant, cords biting skin raw, drawing bloodlines, little bulbs blinking frantic red and green against the trunk as they nodded permanent. piled brush and branches and old dry logs high as chest at my feet, poured cans of sharp stinging fluid, lighter fluid, gasoline, something chemical stronger, drenching clothes and wood and boots till it burned cold, soaking through to skin, smell choking lungs. Struck matches one by one, deliberate, flames licking up fast and hungry roaring, heat blasting face, immediate blistering, smell of burning hair, my own thick pain exploding everywhere as fire caught pants legs and shirt sleeves crawling high. I ripped the blindfold off frantic with teeth and shoulder thrashing, cords cutting deeper into wrists and chest, with every twist, blood spraying warm. Saw them standing in a loose circle, watching calm, with faces lit orange and flickering wild. Reversed carols still playing faint but clear from the open front door behind like the record refused to end. Flames climbed body fast, skin blistering, bubbling hot, popping loud, pants igniting full, kicked out desperate at the pile, scattered burning branches into snow hissing massive steam clouds, rolled sideways hard into deep drift face first, put out the worst but clothes still smoldering smoking. Pain searing everywhere raw like acid, lungs full of smoke-coughing blood flecks. Broke one arm free enough snapping cords with burned hands, clawed at the rest, frantic nails tearing, lights popping sparks, burning skin more. Ran stumbling blind through whipping snow and brush branches, whipping face-drawing bloodlines, legs giving out but crawling when I had to till I hit the road miles down. Flagged a passing plow truck headlights cutting the dark sudden, driver white-faced, slamming brakes calling cops from his radio, while I collapsed, bleeding burned in the cab heater blasting but cold inside permanent. Police came heavy with lights flashing blue-red through snow, dogs barking, ambulances found the house, family gone fast like they'd planned, tire tracks already filling with fresh fall, meat still warm carved on table. Reversed record spinning slow on the player, with deep scratches in the vinyl, like claws dragged desperate. Freezer in the basement packed neat rows with parts labeled careful handwriting. Dates going back decades, names, cuts specified, some fresh, some frozen hard. My burns, 2nd and 3rd degree across legs, torso, arms, skin grafted later, ears damaged permanent from the pressure and blood and sound. Hearing muffled like underwater since with constant ring, scars thick and shiny. Blocked mark everywhere the day I got out of hospital, deleted every trace, burned anything left from college days in the backyard till nothing remained. Never answered the one call from unknown number Christmas night itself, just heavy breathing slow and wet, and that low reversed moan in background like the record kept playing somewhere close. I don't accept Christmas invitations anymore, not from friends, not from anyone new or old. Only blood family I trust completely. And even then I check the menu twice, watch the knives close, listen for music playing wrong. Some traditions you don't join for dinner. You run bleeding and burning if you have to. Because once they start cutting and eating, they don't stop till everyone's shared everything, till you're inside them forever. I still wake up some nights tasting smoke and hearing that whistle pop just before the bang, even though it's been a year and the doctors say the ringing in my ears is permanent now. This high-pitched whine that spikes when it's quiet and makes me flinch at sudden noises like car doors slamming or kids shouting in the street, or even the pop of a champagne cork at New Year's that sends me straight back to that field with the snow turning dark. People keep telling me to let it go, that accidents happen all the time, especially around the holidays when everyone's trying to make things bigger and brighter for the memories, when the eggnog flows too free and caution gets buried under the excitement. But they weren't there when the sky lit up wrong and the screaming started, when the snow turned dark and steaming under what was left of Ben, when the air filled with this sharp burning smell that clung to clothes and hair for days no matter how many times we showered. My sister Lisa hasn't spoken to half the family since that night. Packed up quiet in the spring with Dan and their older daughter, moved away to some small town no one in the family visits. And I don't blame her one bit. We all saw who lit the fuse, we all stood there watching him set up those tubes, and no one said the right thing loud enough to stop it. It was supposed to be our big family Christmas Eve reunion, the kind we'd done every year since we were kids growing up in the same neighborhood. The one tradition that survived divorces and moves and arguments that split cousins apart for years. Lisa and her husband Dan have this house on the edge of town with a huge backyard that backs right onto the community park. Wide open field with no fences or barriers. just grass sloping gentle down to a frozen pond in winter that the kids skate on when it's thick enough. Perfect for the fireworks show we always put on after dinner, once the kids are bundled up warm in coats and scarves, and the adults have had enough eggnog or wine to think handling explosives in the dark is still a good idea with snow on the ground and wind picking up. About 30 of us that year gathering slow through the afternoon and into evening. Aunts and uncles arriving with casseroles and pies still warm from ovens wrapped in towels. Cousins piling in with their own kids and noise and bags of last-minute gifts. Grandparents bringing the same old stories they tell every year about Christmases back when snow was deeper and toys were simpler and you made your own fun. I drove in from the city with my wife and our two, got there early to help set up like always, stringing the multicolored lights along the porch railing and around the windows so they twinkled against the falling snow that had started light but steady in the late afternoon, turning the whole yard white and muffling sound so everything felt softer and safer. Arranging the folding lawn chairs and old quilts and blankets in rows around the fire pit Dan had built years ago from river stones. He hauled himself, kids running wild chasing each other through the fresh dusting, leaving little footprints everywhere and throwing snowballs that melted fast on coats. Dinner inside was loud and warm and chaotic, like it always is, with that many people crammed around tables pushed together end to end down the length of the living room and into the kitchen. The long red plaid cloth Lisa loves covering everything from scratches and spills. Plates piled high with turkey carved thick and juicy, and ham glazed shiny with brown sugar and cloves. Mashed potatoes whipped creamy with too much butter and roasted garlic. Green bean casserole topped with those crispy fried onions that everyone fights over the corner pieces for. Cranberry sauce from the can sliced perfect, keeping its ridges when it slides out. Fresh rolls still steaming from the oven with butter melting in golden pools. Pies cooling on the counter for later. Pumpkin spiced heavy, pecan sticky sweet. Apple with lattice crust flaky and cinnamon sharp. Wine flowing generous from bottles everyone brought their favorite. Beer cold and coolers on the floor for the ones who wanted it simple. Kids at their own little table in the corner with plastic cups of sparkling cider fizzing over the rims. Laughing loud over silly jokes and spilling on the floor that someone would mop later. Ben was the absolute center of it all that night. Lisa's youngest, 8 years old, with this wild blonde hair that stuck up no matter how much she tried to comb it flat with water or spit. Gap-toothed grin from losing 2 front teeth that fall when he bit into an apple too hard at school. Asking everyone at the table if Santa would see our fireworks from way up in the sky and know exactly where to land the sleigh without getting lost in the clouds. Running between the adult table and the kids' one showing off the new sweater Grandma had knitted him special just for tonight. Red with a big goofy reindeer across the front that had a red pom-pom nose he poked proud every time someone noticed. As the sun set proper behind the trees and the snow picked up a little thicker, turning the outside lights into soft halos through the flakes, we all bundled up slow in coats and scarves and hats and mittens pulled from the pile by the door, boots stomping snow off on the mat inside before heading out, trooped through the back door with lawn chairs unfolded and old quilts and blankets draped over shoulders, flashlights bobbing in hands for the ones who needed to see the fuses clear in the dark. Dan and my Uncle Rick had the fireworks ready on the flat patch near the park boundary like always. Couple big cardboard boxes of the legal ones we'd all chipped in for at the stand outside town a week earlier. Rockets in plastic tubes and fountains, and those spinning ground ones the kids love that spray sparks in wide circles. Set up careful with launch tubes stuck firm in buckets of sand for stability against any wind. Water buckets filled from the hose and fire extinguishers standing by close because we weren't complete idiots even with the drinks. Everyone gathered in this loose semicircle facing the launch area, kids up front on blankets with their hot chocolate cups steaming in cold hands leaving little rings on the snow. Adults behind with drinks and phones ready to film vertical for stories, breath fogging white in the air, laughter echoing as the first test sparkler hissed to life in Dan's hand and the kids cheered. That's when Ray showed up from the side gate by the fence line, carrying this big, heavy cardboard box under one arm like he'd just come from his truck parked somewhere down the street out of sight, calling out loud hellos and Merry Christmas to everyone with that big, booming voice he has, backslapping Dan and Rick like old pals catching up after too long, setting the box down heavy near the launch area with a thud that kicked up a puff of snow dust, saying he'd brought some extras to really make the show pop this year because he heard through the grapevine we were doing the usual, and didn't want us stuck with just the boring stuff from the stand. He started pulling out these huge tubes and mortars that looked professional grade, way bigger and heavier than anything we'd bought legal, Colorful labels faded but promising massive bursts in colors, fuses thick as rope coiled neat. Said he got them cheap from a connection who owed him a favor, that these would go higher and louder than our little ones, make it a night the kids would remember forever with eyes wide and mouths open. Dan laughed a bit uneasy, rubbing the back of his neck. Said we had plenty already and the safe ones were fine for the kids. But Ray waved him off, grinning wide, started arranging them anyway right next to ours, helping position the tubes firm in the snow while the kids crowded close, excited, asking if they could light one of the really big ones, voices high and bouncing. The early displays went fine enough to keep things rolling smooth. The safe ones first that we knew well, fountains spraying sparks gold and green and blue in wide fans that hissed and crackled, rockets whistling up clean and straight, cracking into big blooming stars that hung slow in the dark sky before fading gentle into trails of smoke. Everyone cheering and oohing loud, phones out filming vertical for stories and memories, kids jumping up and down on blankets leaving little footprints everywhere. Ray took over lighting after a few without anyone really deciding it, hands steady but eyes a little too bright and red from the beer he kept chugging straight from the bottle he'd pulled from his coat pocket, telling stories between fuses about shows he'd done bigger and wilder back in the day with friends who knew how to get the real stuff, mentioning close calls with this booming laugh like it was hilarious. How one time something shot sideways low, but nobody got hurt bad, just a scare and some singed hair to laugh about later. Ben clung to Lisa's leg a bit during the louder booms that shook the ground, whispering up to her that he was scared of the really big ones that made his chest rumble, but Ray knelt down, quick, grinning wide, handed him a long sparkler to hold away from his body, flame-dancing bright reflection in his glassy eyes while he told Ben not to worry, little man. The best was coming, and it would be the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Worth a little noise. The tension built slow after that, without anyone saying it out loud or making a move. Dan exchanging worried glances with Rick across the launch area every time Ray bent over another fuse with his lighter flicking. Rick shrugging helpless like, what can you do without making a scene in front of everyone? A couple aunts murmuring quiet to each other near the back about maybe wrapping it up soon before it got too late or too cold for the little ones, but no one speaking up direct to Ray or telling him to step back because the mood was good and the kids were loving it and no one wanted to be the one to ruin the magic. Ray lit a few more of his big ones anyway, booms shaking the ground hard enough snow vibrated off low branches overhead, flashes lighting faces stark white, then plunging back to shadow, smoke drifting thick with that sharp gunpowder smell mixing with the cold air and the pine from the trees. Then he went for the biggest in his box, the one he'd saved, bragging it would be the absolute finale, even though we were barely halfway through the safe ones we knew. Said, let's do it now while everyone's still fresh and the sky's clear enough to see it all the way up, lit the fuse quick with his lighter flicking steady, stepped back, grinning wide, waiting for the whistle to climb high. It didn't go up right. Whistled wrong, off-key, and angry like a scream building, tube tilting sudden on the unsteady base in the softening snow from all the heat and footsteps trampling around, shot sideways low and fast, straight into the crowd where the kids stood closest, bundled on blankets facing expectant with mouths open. Hit Ben's center chest with this sick heavy thud that cut the air dead, explosion right there immediate. Sound like the world ripping open loud enough ears rang instant and chests compressed, flash blinding white hotter than sun-searing retinas with after-images burning green, heat blast knocking people back hard into snow and toppling chairs everywhere. When the smoke cleared thick and choking with powder and something worse, eyes adjusted slow to the dark again. He was on the ground, small body twisted wrong in the shallow cratered snow, clothes burned away in ragged patches, exposing skin blistered red and black and raw bubbling, chest open wide with bone shards, white and meat dark, steaming in the cold air, blood spreading fast, melting snow pink, then red around him in a widening pool. Lisa's scream cut through everything raw and animal like something inside her broke permanent, hands slipping in wet grass and blood reaching for him, fingers coming away slick red, voice cracking into sobs that wouldn't stop. We tried. God, we tried, desperate in the chaos. Pressure on the gaping wound with coats stripped off and hands pressing hard. CPR till ribs cracked under palms, pumping frantic. Someone shouting hoarse for phones and 911 and ambulance now. Lights shaking in blood-smeared hands, kids crying hysterical backed away, the air thick with burned powder and flesh and fear. But he was gone before the sirens even started, far away wailing through the night. Ray stood frozen a few steps back, Box dropped open at feet, spilling more fuses into snow. Face pale, drained, bloodless, muttering, "It wasn't supposed to go like that. It was supposed to go up high." Over and over quiet, like he couldn't believe his own eyes, then turned sudden and ran stumbling into the park, dark disappearing between snow-laden trees fast. Police caught him 2 days later, holed up drunk and shaking in a cheap motel off the highway, claiming pure accident over and over, that no one told him to stop or that the base wasn't stable in the snow. Charged manslaughter, illegal explosives possession, took a plea deal quick to avoid trial. Out in 5 maybe with good behavior. Time served counting. We buried Ben the day after New Year's under gray sky, no snow left on ground. Small casket too light for what it held. Everyone standing silent in black coats, with faces blank or crying quiet. Lisa won't do gatherings anymore, won't answer calls from most of us. Family fractured quiet with blame floating unspoken in every text thread. Some at Ray, some at Dan for not stopping him harder, some at ourselves for standing quiet. I don't do fireworks, don't do big nights with crowds and noise. When someone says, "Make it memorable for the kids," I leave the room fast or change the subject. Because sometimes one person changes everything with one fuse lit too casual, and no one asks the right questions till the light's too bright and too late, till the snow runs red and the screaming won't stop echoing. I've been trying to forget this for a year now. But every time December hits and I walk past those tree lots with the fresh pines stacked high against chain-link fences under floodlights, or see the fake ones glowing in store windows with their pre-lit branches winking on and off in patterns that seem too regular, I feel this cold sweat break out across my back and my hands start shaking uncontrollably, like the branches are still reaching for me in the dark, needles pricking skin and drawing blood that runs warm then cold down my arms. People think I'm just one of those guys who hates the holidays, that I'm bah humbug or whatever because I live in this bare apartment with no decorations, no lights, nothing but blank walls and a couch I sleep on most nights instead of the bed because the bedroom feels too closed in. But they don't know why I won't have a tree anymore, why I keep the curtains drawn tight from Thanksgiving to January and flinch at the sound of ornaments clinking together or lights buzzing faintly on a string, or why I drive miles out of my way to avoid those pop-up lots where the air smells thick with sap and cut wood and something underneath like old rot waiting to wake. I bought the wrong one last year. That's all it started as, a cheap real tree from some sketchy pop-up lot on the edge of town where the guy selling them looks half asleep behind a folding table with a space heater humming at his feet and a cigarette dangling from his lip ash long. The price is too good to be true because the trees are already dropping needles fast and browning at the tips from being cut too early or stored wrong in some warehouse too long with no light. I thought it would be nice for once, something to make the place feel less empty and hollow after the breakup that left me alone in the apartment with echoes in every room and the silence pressing in too heavy at night. Maybe take a few pictures to send to the few friends I had left or post online to pretend everything was fine and I wasn't falling apart quiet inside with the bottles piling up. Had no idea it was waiting for someone like me. Someone who'd decorate it cheap and careless with dollar store crap. Someone who'd cut into it for lights and hang plastic baubles that clinked fake and hollow. Picked it up the first weekend of December on a whim after work when the lot was almost empty and the guy was packing up early for the night. This 6-foot Douglas fir that looked full enough from a distance in the dim lot, lights flickering yellow under the sagging tent, canvas flapping in the wind, trunk straight and thick with bark rough under my gloves like it gripped back, branches dense with needles that poked sharp when I tested them for freshness, drawing a pinprick of blood I didn't notice till later. Paid cash quick to the guy who barely looked up from his phone long enough to count the bills crumpled. Helped tie it to the roof of my car with rough twine that bit into the bark, leaving sap oozing sticky and dark like blood slow. Drove home slow with the windows cracked a little because the pine smell filling the car was already too strong through the vents, making my eyes water and my throat scratch raw like inhaling something alive. Got it inside alone, wrestling the heavy plastic stand onto the trunk with sap sticking to my hands thick and tacky, like it wouldn't wash off easy no matter how hard I scrubbed later. Water in the base sloshing over the sides onto the hardwood floor where it pooled dark and smelled wrong like stagnant pond. Needles shedding more in thick piles. I vacuumed up cursing under my breath, telling myself it was normal for real trees to lose a few at first when they adjust to the heat inside. Started decorating that night after a couple beers to steady my nerves and shake off the chill from outside that had seeped into bones. Cheap stuff mostly from the dollar store down the block I'd grabbed on impulse the week before. The kind of lights with thin wires that tangle easy and bulbs that flicker weak and uneven when plugged in. Plastic ornaments in bulk packs of 50 for $5 with hooks that bend too easy and snap under weight. Tinsel from last year still tangled in the storage box, smelling musty and old like attic dust. That's when it started moving wrong. When the ordinary turned into something that made my skin crawl and my heart race like I was being watched by something that hated me already. First string of lights I wrapped around the lower branches, careful not to tangle them too bad or prick myself more, plugging in to test if they all worked. The bulbs flickered, once dim and unsteady like they were struggling to breathe. Then the strand yanked hard, sudden like an invisible hand pulled vicious from inside the trunk, wrapping tight around my wrist, cutting circulation instant. Wire biting deep into skin, drawing blood beads warm and sticky that dripped down my arm in thin lines, soaking sleeve. I jerked back, cursing loud sharp in the empty apartment, but the cord held firm like it was alive and angry, branches bending inward fast like arms closing in a hug too tight and crushing. Needles pricking sharp through my shirt sleeves into flesh, stinging deep like hundreds of tiny teeth biting and twisting, some embedding under skin, burning as they burrowed with each pull. Managed to unplug it fast with the free hand fumbling numb and slick with blood. Heart pounding in my chest like it wanted out, ribs aching, wrist already bruising purple and swelling hot pulsing. But when I stepped away, breathing hard, ragged, the tree shifted whole. Stand scraping loud on the hardwood floor, leaving deep gouges like claws dragged deliberate, moving an inch toward me like it leaned forward listening or waiting for the next move, needles rustling soft like whispering threats in a language I almost understood. Tried again the next night with a different string I dug from the box, hoping it was just a fluke or static or something rational. Same thing. Cord snaking alive sudden when I turned to grab a handful of ornaments from the coffee table scattered, wrapping ankles tight when I knelt down to fix the skirt around the base to hide the ugly stand leaking sap, pulling me off balance hard, face first into the branches that scratched my cheeks and forehead, drawing bloodlines, stinging salt and sweat running down, needles embedding under skin like splinters burning with each flex of muscle, some breaking off deep enough I felt them for days, scraping nerves. Ornaments I hung disappeared slow. 1 minute clip secure on the branch with the cheap hook bending under weight. Next gone when I blinked or looked away for a second to untangle tinsel from my fingers sticky. Found later shoved deep in the trunk among the darker inner needles like hidden deliberate and waiting to surprise. Some cracked with glass shards glittering sharp inside the foliage, ready to cut fingers when I reached in. Searching blind, furious. Slicing palms deep enough blood dripped steady on the floor, mixing with fallen needles, turning them dark wet. Tinsel strands slithered off branches when I turned my back to get more from the box on the couch, sagging, coiled on the floor in piles like snakes waiting to strike cold. One wrapping my legs sudden when I stepped too close, careless, tripping me face first into the tree hard again. Branches whipping across my cheek, welts rising instant hot and throbbing with pulse. One branch thicker, lashing eye close enough, lid swelled shut, bruised purple bleeding at the corner. The tree grew too fast after that. Overnight taller by feet, not inches. Fuller with branches thicker and heavier hanging low, almost touching floor. Needles darkening to almost black and sharp as pins glinting. Ceiling scraping loud by mid-December, where it had been a foot short before with plaster dust sifting down like dandruff. Roots pushing out from the cracked plastic stand, slow like veins burrowing thick, cracking floorboard, seeking dirt below the building foundation. Sap leaking black from splits, smelling stronger rot. One night, I woke to creaking loud from the living room like wood splitting under pressure. Went downstairs with a flashlight shaking in hand beam, cutting the dark. The tree had moved itself to block the front door complete. Stand leaving deep gouges in the hardwood like claws dragged long and angry. Branches spread wide like barring exit permanent with needles pointing out sharp. Needles arranged on the welcome mat in crooked letters, bleeding sap thick. No cheap lights. Bare is better. Leave me natural or bleed. I tried cutting it down that night, desperate, with an axe from the garage shed, rusted but sharp. Blade bit deep into the trunk with a wet, heavy thunk that echoed through the empty rooms. Sap bleeding black, thick and sticky like oil pouring out in gushes, but branches whipped back, lashing my face, welts rising fresh and burning hot, needles raking eyes, stinging blind with tears and blood mixing. Axe yanked from hands, sudden embedded in bark, vibrating like it laughed. Trunk closing the wound slow like healing flesh pulsing visible under bark. Sap hardening over the cut black and shiny sealing tight. It got worse every day after. The violence building slow but steady, like it was learning me. Messages started appearing more often, needles falling in patterns on the rug, spelling threats longer and clearer. Dollar trash. Not for me. Decorate and die slow, natural or nothing, or bleed more. I tried burning it one desperate afternoon when the growth got too fast for the room. Doused the branches heavy with gasoline from the mower can in the garage, smell choking strong fumes, burning eyes, match thrown from across the room shaking hard. Flames licked up fast, roaring hot orange and blue eating needles crackling. But the tree drank it in like water thirsty deep. Growing taller instant with crackles loud, branches stretching ceiling cracking plaster dust falling thick white. Flames dying out unnatural leaving char marks that faded slow like skin regenerating scarred and tougher. Knives from the kitchen drawer flew one morning when I stepped out for coffee half asleep barefoot. Blades embedding in the doorframe inches from my head, thudding wood, hard vibrating, thrown from branches whipping sudden like arms flinging furious, one grazing cheek slicing shallow but deep enough, blood ran hot down jaw dripping on shirt collar soaking through, another nicking ear tearing cartilage sting sharp with blood warm in hair. Car nearly crushed parking in the driveway after work exhausted. Tree toppled deliberate across the hood as I pulled in slow headlights cutting snow. Trunk smashing roof, denting deep with metal groan loud and twisting, glass cracking spiderweb across windshield trapping me inside dark, branches punching through side windows, shards flying, cutting arms and face blood warm spraying, me trapped inside till I floored reverse escaping sparks from wires shorting hot burning plastic smell, tree roots ripping up concrete driveway cracking loud as it righted itself slow behind me, branches waving like arms angry. The light strangling came one night when I tried adding more strings to appease it maybe or drown it in glow. Cords wrapping neck tight sudden from behind when I reached high. Pulling back hard choking air cut off instant. Face bulging red veins popping. Vision tunneling black spots dancing. Branches holding firm while I clawed gasping desperate. Nails breaking on bark splintering under. Cords cutting throat skin raw blood trickling warm down chest. Broke free, ripping one strand with teeth biting wire tasting copper. Coughing blood flecks pink on palm foaming. Roots burst through floor one morning sudden, cracking hardwood up in splinters flying sharp. Wrapping ankles pulling down hard into jagged wood cutting calves. Deep gashes blood pooling thick dark on floor. Tree dragging me toward trunk mouth opening like split bark teeth sharp glinting sap. Branches lowering to impale. Only way out came desperate after weeks trapped, barely eating, sleeping. Drove, shaking, bleeding to the lot still open late despite the cold closing soon. Bought the most expensive artificial one they had in stock, tall and perfect white fiber optic tips, pre-strung with bright LED lights, white and blinding that hummed strong when plugged in filling room. Hauled it home fast, ignoring pain legs burning, set it up inside quick in the opposite corner away. Decorated frantic with every light and ornament I had left, even the broken ones, shards cutting fingers more. Plugged in, lights blazing pure and strong, filling the room with glare harsh white. Heard the scream outside then, high keening like wind through needles dying in agony long. Ran to the window curtains, torn aside bleeding hands. The cursed tree writhed under the glow from my new one shining through glass relentless. Branches twisting, burning from inside out. Violent crackling. Sap boiling black and bubbling out cracks exploding pops, disintegrating slow to ash pile gray, and smoking in the snow wind carrying the final burn smell away choking. It's gone now, but I keep the new tree up year round, lights on always burning bright hot white, just in case something else out there doesn't like being left bare or forgotten or cut for cheap glow. Because some trees remember the cheap decorations, the cuts for lights, the careless hands that hung plastic and wire, and they get revenge slow and violent, branch by branch, needle by needle till you bleed out choking on sap.